There are some seats up here or right here in the middle if you'd like to take a seat. Wouldn't want you standing all night back there. Time is now 6:30. We will begin the Moses Lake City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, September 26th. Citizens who request to address the council will be called on at the appropriate time to make your comments. For the few students that we have in the audience, if we're not done by 9 o'clock, we'll take a short break to sign your forms. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Mayor Myers. Councilmember Fancher.
Present.
Councilmember Swartz.
Present.
Councilmember Madewell.
Present.
Councilmember Eck. Councilmember Scogg.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
Present.
Mayor Myers.
Present. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. One nation. Does any council member wish to move a consent agenda item to a business item for individual discussion and vote? Or make other modifications for tonight's agenda? Councilmember Scott.
I'd like to move the item K, Hope Source Shelter Management Extension for discussion.
And we can move that to new business. Need a motion to approve minus item K.
I move to approve the agenda as presented, except for item K.
Thank you. Need a second.
Second.
All those opposed? Or sorry, straight to it.
Yeah.
All those for?
Aye.
Against? Motion passes. We do have a presentation tonight, the Moses Lake Community Coalition second quarter update. Megan Watson and Jessica Cox, if you're in the audience or online. Oh, there you are. And we just need your name and city of residence for the record.
All right. Megan Watson, Moses Lake.
And I'm Matt Pollock. I don't live in city limits, but basically Moses Lake, still a Moses Lake address. I'm not Jessica tonight.
There
There you
it is.
There we go.
Yep.
All right. So I'm Matt Pollock. I'm the chairperson of the Moses Lake Community Coalition. just to make our presentation clear, I wear a number of hats in the city, and I'm just here for the community coalition tonight. Not that anything's going to be controversial or anything like that, but that's the hat that I'm wearing. And this is Megan.
So I am coalition coordinator for the community coalition. I think I was here once before, about a year ago, to present. So it's been a while. So definitely looking forward to relaying some information about what we've been up to.
So I'll start with kind of who we are, and throughout the presentation, like, we're happy to have a discussion. Interrupt us at any time if you've got questions on anything about it. But what the Moses Lake Community Coalition was began as, and we're kind of morphing into more than that, is a substance abuse prevention coalition. So what we work on is preventing drug and alcohol use in our community, focused on juveniles. So we've branched out a little bit, and we're starting to work on mental health issues, closely related things. The causes of mental health issues and substance abuse disorders are very tightly linked. So it makes sense for us to work with the organizations that focus on those as well. So for our presentation tonight, so we're going to show you what the benefits of prevention are, the long-term consequences of substance abuse, trails of prevention. So what that means is, like, how do we prevent the uptake of substance use, and supporting the work. So what can be done to make the a coalition maximally impactful. Right. Do you want to take this one?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So just a couple of slides to show just generally what benefits of having a prevention coalition can provide to the community. Just taking a look at everything in bold, an overall sense of health and well-being. You do see reduced crime and violence. That's part of those long-term consequences that we're talking about. Family stability, in that our coalition is particularly focused on tools that we can provide to local families. Economic impact. Fun fact, for every $1 invested in prevention, a community sees an $18 return. You see that in reduced healthcare costs, mental health care costs, and legal costs. And then being able to provide youth development opportunities. A sense of community cohesion. In order for prevention to be effective, it's essential that the community at large sort of be on the same page with that. For our purposes, we're actually required to work with 12 different sectors across the community, including local government, law enforcement, schools, faith-based organizations, and currently our coalition is represented by every sector within our community. Educational success, that goes hand in hand with youth substance use, long-term public health, and then overall quality of life.
All
Do you
right.
want to talk about?
Sure.
this? Okay.
Yeah, let's do it. So let's put up some scary numbers now. It'll pop up on the screen in a second, but so we are required to operate based on evidence. We can't just make up situations and work to prevent them. So not only do we have to collect data in order to know what to work on, we also have to have programs that have been shown to be effective to address those issues. So in Moses Lake, 43% of 10th graders report having low grades. Historically, about a third of our 10th graders report skipping school. An average of 6.5% of our 10th graders report gang membership. 46% of our 10th graders report experiencing depression in the previous 12 months. And about a fifth of our 10th graders report considering suicide in the previous 12 months. That's scary stuff to think about. So what we do is we work on the underlying causes to help prevent that. Now, a great thing to think about is, well, most of our kids are not experiencing these things. So we have a good solid foundation to work on. And what we try to do is build up the health of our community as a whole to not have kids sink through the cracks or be in a situation where they can't have success.
So a little bit about how prevention actually works. You just saw the long-term consequences. Those are the things that we are looking ultimately to affect. They're all linked to youth substance use. So first we have to collect the data, which we do through the Healthy Youth Survey, to determine what are those substances of concern. Our coalition has determined that our focus should remain on alcohol, marijuana, and prescription medication, which then by extension also fentanyl. So that's where our focus lies. Next, we look for data, which is also largely provided by the Healthy Youth Survey. It's provided by our partners from the coalition that regularly work with youth, and then conversations with youth themselves to investigate why they're utilizing these substances, where they're getting them. And then we need to dig in and find out what is it about this community specifically that sort of helps to foster that use or make it more likely. It's a local condition and that's specific to every community. There's sort of a saying in our work that if you've seen one coalition, you've seen one coalition. They all operate differently because the idea is to take the science behind prevention, but very specifically tailor it to the community that you're working in. So it really needs to be about our local youth and what's happening here. Once we can really determine why and why here, that allows us to find a strategy that would adequately impact that thing. Largely, the strategies that we have to choose must be evidence-based. So these are well-studied strategies. These are not things, for the most part, that we're just innovating. These are things that have already a solid track record. Oh, so we'll give an example.
Yeah.
What that looks like.
Oh,
Do you wanna do
yeah. So, alcohol, marijuana, prescription medicine, fentanyl. So the why is early initiation of substance use. So one thing that we do know through research is that the longer you can prevent kids from starting a substance, the better their outcome is later on. So starting in middle school is actually one of the areas that the data has shown us that we need to do, instead of thinking, everybody thought about drinking in high school and stuff like that, but we're seeing that the actual attitudes that lend to that start in middle school and maybe late elementary school. So that's one of our big focuses.
Quick statistic.
Yeah.
Because I have to.
Yes.
Numbers wise, it's important to know 90% of people that suffer with a substance use disorder, those are people that started using substances before they were 18 years old. So it's very, very clear with the data that if we can delay onset of use, you drastically reduce the likeliness of a future addiction. It's well documented, it's pretty solid, and 90% is kind of significant. Sorry.
No, you're good. Good. So one of the strategies that we use, sorry. Oh, did I hear something or was it just me? Feedback is me. Okay. One of the strategies we use in our schools is PAC's Good Behavior Game and PAC's Tools Workshops. Now, and these are probably one of our longest running programs. And what PAC's Good Behavior Game is it teaches kids how to regulate their emotions, how to deal with stress, how to really behave themselves in class, for lack of a better term. But what we found is if they are given the tools to communicate in a why am I blanking right now? If they communicate clearly or can communicate their emotions, they are more successful longer in school, and that helps to prevent some of the substance use.
Yeah.
We kind of skipped ahead, but there was one other thing that I wanted to mention. Sorry. Oh, and PAC's Tools gives families those same sets of tools. So if a family, for instance, and I didn't know all the stuff that went into it, so it's useful for everybody. But when you teach a family how to communicate with each other, the outcomes are generally a lot better moving on. And those communication tools are great for everybody to brush up on. So that's one of our good things.
Yeah, a couple of cool things about PACS. Right now, we have partnered with Larson Heights Elementary for a school-wide implementation. All of their staff was just trained this past August, and once the school year began, they started utilizing PACS. So what the coalition also provides to an elementary school that chooses to do this program with us is PACS Tools Workshops for Parents, which Matt just talked a lot about. This is for continuity. This is so that we can have parents reinforcing if they're using the same exact strategies from the classroom at home. So it's just reinforcing these ideas. PACS is rooted in science. It's rooted in psychology, neuroscience, biology. They take a little bit of everything to create these strategies. We are fortunate enough this year to be funded that we could offer PAC's good behavior game to 2, potentially 3 more elementary schools. Unfortunately, it is on a first come, first serve. We're funded for what we're funded for, but this is something we intend to offer every single year until all of our elementary schools can be operating under the same program. For those that are familiar, the school does do PBIS. PBIS is sort of the concept and PACS is the implementation. So it means that schools don't have to be creative and come up with a system. They can just utilize PACS and that's satisfying PBIS. It's sort of packaged for them.
Marijuana is one that I like talking about a lot, and there's a good analogy that I've got that I like to use as an example. So we've seen a strong uptick in marijuana use in kids, and one thing that pediatricians see in particular, I'm married to a pediatrician, so I hear about this sort of thing all the time, is with car seats. So if a pediatrician has a suggestion for how the most effective way for kids for car seat placement in the car or orientation, whether it's back facing or forward facing, they make those recommendations to parents. And one thing that they notice is that the law actually is a stronger impact on what people do than what their pediatrician tells them to do. So we notice with the law, they will follow the law. Well, what we saw with marijuana was the law changed. People are able to use marijuana legally. People associated less of a risk. And no matter how much, sometimes we tell people that marijuana is a concern for the developing brain, because the law is more lax than it used to be. We're seeing an uptick in marijuana use.
So you can see on here that about half of our 10th graders say that it's easy to get their hands on. I just want to talk for just a second about access and availability. During COVID, and we saw this with the data with the Healthy Youth Survey, during COVID, we saw a significant reduction in a lot of the substances. What that is being attributed to is a lot of kids were at home, they had less access to friends and more oversight from parents, and that is what part of what created the reduction. It really kind of highlighted how limiting access can be significant. And we do know from our work with the schools, with talking to school resource officers, vape and dab devices are like the #1 confiscated contraband. Would you call it contraband in a school? I don't know, feels harsh, but so we saw a little bit about what limiting access can do.
Another one of our successful strategies is if kids don't have access to substances, obviously they aren't going to be able to use it. So one thing we've done, like maybe parents are really good about keeping their kids away from their medications that they have in their medicine cabinets, but kids go to visit grandma and grandpa. And so we were at the senior fair is what it's called, right? Senior picnic. And we just handed out locking medication boxes and locking pill boxes so that even if the kids go to grandparents' house, then they don't have access to that medication if they were thinking about using it.
What we found in some of our discussions is that a lot of these devices are being brought to school and distributed by students. Since they're not old enough to be purchasing it themselves, somebody's buying it for them. So our goal is to create strong relationships with our local dispensaries. You would rather be in partnership with those businesses than be adversaries of. So we'd like to create strong partnerships, and our future request, once we're friendly enough, will be that maybe they will agree to limit the number of devices that they sell to a single customer at a given time, so that an adult cannot go in and buy 20 dab pens, give them to a student, and the student take it to the high school.
Which one do we want to do? Should I stop here and see if anybody has any questions?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So going back a little bit, you have data from 21. Do you have any data from last year? Are you starting to take any from last year as well?
So they typically do these every other year. So they were thrown off a little bit with COVID, but this particular survey is being administered again
Next
In
week.
October?
Yep.
Was it October? In October, we don't get the results until the following spring. But a lot of what we've done is sort of semi-consider the 2021 data because it was COVID data and it was a little skewed, and looking at trends. And our coalition is following trends that go back to 2014. So I mean, we are watching over the progression of time what it looks like too, and taking that into consideration.
Okay, then my other question is elementary schools. Is Larson the first one that you're working with, or have you already worked with some elementary schools in the past?
Larson is the first school that's taken it on like on a total school-wide basis. And there has been some work with other schools. During COVID, it was providing the PAX tools. I wasn't here for that.
Yeah, so I believe, so during COVID, what we had to do was, since nobody was in school, we made kits that we passed out at the schools when they were giving out free lunches to families that needed them. And that was a really successful program that I believe we had in 2 schools. Don't quote me, I'd have to go back and look, but we had it in a couple schools then. Larson has been our kind of go-to place because just the rates of need that they have is higher than some of the other schools, but that's not to ignore other schools. It's just that the teachers that we had there we had some senior teachers that had been trained in it before, and they were able to communicate how good it is. And now with some new schools opening up, some of those teachers have moved around to some other schools. So now we have more of a base to get people on board with it. And you know, it's taking a day out of teachers' lives to train them on something. And everybody who's taken it that has talked to me personally has said, wow, this has really made my life a lot easier in the classroom. So, you know, we're happy with the program. And if it wasn't, we would switch to an evidence-based thing that was also working locally, but we're not ignoring the local part of it being effective. So we're getting that feedback. Mhm. Any other?
Do you have another question here?
Yeah.
Councilmember Scog.
You talked about you can do what you could do as your funding allows. How are you funded?
Okay, so we do have a few different sources. Gratefully, the city of Moses Lake is one of those sources for us. We've been supported by them on a consistent basis.
Do you know to what extent?
You mean dollar wise?
Yes,
Yes, so $12,000 a year
a year. Okay.
for a grant through Thriving Together, which is formerly NCACH. They have funded us this year for just under 43,000 for this year. And then the bulk of our funding comes from CPWI, which is Community Prevention Wellness Initiative, and that comes through the Healthcare Authority. That's the most of what we get, and that's at 130,000 a year. We are regularly trying to seek diversified avenues.
Yeah.
But for this year, that's where we sit.
I'm sure you all know the nature of government funding is that it's cyclical, and CPWI grant is not going to be something that we feel we can maintain a coalition on long term. So getting diversified funding and actually just to say thank you for the funding that you have provided us. CPWI is so stringent in what we're allowed to do with it that often we're kind of tied into one-year programs, and one-year programs are like as good as they can be. They're not effective. Like we need 5 years or longer so that we can make sure that we're being as effective as we can. And it also helps us be more responsible with the money. Like if we're having to go back and fundraise every single year for the same pot of dollars, that's just wasted time that we could have been using actually doing the work that matters. But thank you so much for the Moses Lake funding. It's definitely been useful in our community.
Another question, when you talk about 43% of 10th graders with low grades and skipping school and depression, how many 10th graders are we talking about?
Like number of 10th grade students.
Like how many 10th graders make up, what's the number of 10th graders that reflect that
Oh,
data?
that took that survey.
Uh-huh.
That I'm not sure of. I know maybe some context would help. They provide the survey. We're tracking 8th, 10th, and 12th graders. And I know that it was during COVID, it was about 1,100 something students that took the survey.
And those are all 10th graders?
No, that was
That's all
8th,
three.
10th, and 12th. Yeah, that was all
Or
of
all
them.
4.
All four, yes.
Yeah,
sixth, eighth,
6th, 8th,
10th,
10th, and 12th.
It's not ideal, the amount of data that we've been, ideally, you want to have at minimum like 80% participation. We don't see 80% participation. There's been, especially over the last implementation of the survey, a bit of controversy about the survey. And parents are allowed to opt out. Students don't have to take it. I mean, it's totally voluntary. So we didn't see a whole lot of participation, especially this last time around. We're hoping for this next one, that people are a little more inclined to take it. And we are
Yeah.
working to help clear up some of the confusion that may have caused an aversion to this survey before.
Do you see any numbers changing? I mean, if we're talking 1,000 10th graders, there's 430 of them that are getting low grades and 200 of them are going to think about suicide. I mean, how do you measure your impact? mean-
So yeah, that's a good question. And that's something that should be reflected in the data every other year as it comes out. A little bit of a wrench got thrown in during COVID. They changed the way they implement the survey. They skipped a year. So normally when we do every other year, we're tracking the same cohort of kids because they're taking it in 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grade. But when you back it up a year, now you're taking with a whole new cohort of kids that have never seen it before. And so it really skewed the data big time. So I don't want to say it's starting from scratch because we do see trends going from 2014 to 2021, 2018. You can see some trending, but it is kind of a little bit like a refresh. But the goal is to be able to follow the data to see the impact. And Healthy Youth Survey is something that's utilized by the whole state of Washington. Prevention in general across the states, they don't have access to this level of survey that's taken on a statewide basis. So, I mean, we're really kind of lucky in that Washington state has a solid system for this. It's just a matter, it can vary area by area. And when you're in an area that people are particularly uncomfortable about the idea of collecting data, you don't see as much participation as you like.
I'll also point out that there was one question in particular that drew the controversy last time, and that one's been eliminated from this year. So we should be done with that. I hope. We'll see, because like, if the kids don't tell us what they're doing, like, how do we know what they're doing? Like, so we need to ask them. So that this is the way that we do it. And it's done in a way that helps us see if a new trend comes. And we definitely saw that with marijuana. When they were taking it at home with COVID, what we were seeing in doctors' offices, what we were hearing from teachers, didn't match what the survey results were. So they were taking it on their home computer, and like, you never know what happens then. So it you know, I don't know, but we're looking forward to this year's data.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
Going back, or in reference to your comment that it was a little more difficult this last time that you tried to do the survey, are the parents allowed to see those questions?
Yeah. They, all of the information about the survey is available. I believe it's askhys.net, and parents can actually view all of the questions. And then the school district reviews the questions in advance. So if there are questions that the district wants to opt out of, they're welcome to. And then also, students are not required to answer. They can skip any question that they don't want to answer. And a lot of the questions are, they're logic based. So a student won't be asked a question unless they give an indicator that it would make sense. If they say no, they've never used a substance, then we're not going to ask them where they get it from or anything like that. So, I mean, not every student is answering every question.
So follow-up question, is the school district going to help you to address the concerns from last year? Or are you?
So they
Rather
sent
than-
out the email notification last week, or was it this week? It was either this week or last week. So usually any concerns that come up, people will email back if they have that. It had the links to the surveys and the survey information and the questions that are available. So, and you know, if anybody has any questions, you know, we're a community coalition, we're made up of community members. Ask us, we're here to, you know, and join us too. Like, this is good work that we need help with. So it's totally transparent. Anybody's got a question about it, we'll help.
It's all about what the district wants too, what the community wants. The ESD, this is a lot of what they take on as their responsibility too, is working with communities and providing this information. So they've also offered to come and if a community event or something, some kind of informational night is requested by the community, they're happy to do that too, just so everybody's fears and concerns can sort of be allayed and answer all those questions.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions before we? Yeah.
Okay, you can continue. No
Okay,
questions here.
what's next? Did we do this one already?
Yeah, I'll do the trail if you want to talk about.
Yeah.
Okay. So for this one is across the board for all substances as well. We're finding that there's a general, what's referred to as favorable attitude of use and a low perception of harm. So there's some statistics there that kind of show you the comfortability that our youth have with the idea of substances. I just want to point out that those numbers are high. Those are higher than the use numbers. So more students are saying that they're comfortable and they don't think it's risky than are actually using. That's sort of the silver lining, I guess. And what we have determined through looking at data is that part of this attitude comes from just having healthy beliefs and clear standards, oftentimes within the family or the community at large, and then also low neighborhood attachment, it's really just, that's about a sense of belonging. So in order to address these particular root causes, our goal is to be able to provide a space for youth where they can experience opportunities, skills, and recognition and get a sense of belonging and have access to those clear standards, which overall does show, that does have good academic outcomes as well as attendance outcomes, reducing substance use and improving mental health. And so a little bit more about where we're hoping to take that. You'll have to wing it until I can get it to
Okay,
change the
that's
picture.
fine. I got a thing here. I'm on the wrong page. Okay. So youth drop-in center and free youth activities. So I've been involved in the coalition for about 4 years. This is my first year as being chair of the coalition. And one of the things that kids told us that they needed was a place to be. And this is fairly common with kids in our community, I think, is that a lot of kids end up staying at home, twiddling their thumbs, not having something to do. That is a big risk factor for starting substance abuse. And one of the things that I have to be honest, that we failed at a few years ago was they said they needed a place where they could go and just be, that they would be safe, that they could spend their time, they could be with friends, like a drop-in center. And we did something else with that. And it's one of my big regrets working with the coalition, but fortunately, we don't have to stick with that. So one of our goals is to have a youth drop-in center where kids can go, and we'll have a variety of activities. We're working with partners in the community to develop that idea, and because to manage a drop-in center ourselves would be a big cost and a lot of effort to put in. But one of the organizations that we're exploring that with is the library, because they have some space available if it can be made ADA compliant, and they have staff available that already is there, and it would be a good partnership for us to use. So I bring that up not because we've approved anything or gotten too far down the road, but that's sort of a partnership where it's centrally located in the city, and already has people there that are doing some of the same things, and we can work together. That's one of the ways where we could make a huge impact without as much cost. And free youth activities. So this is one of the cool things that I really like talking about. When we think about substance abuse prevention, like a lot of people tend to say, well, I don't want to think about that. I have to think about drugs. How do we keep kids off these drugs? We're just going to tell them not to do it. Prevention has nothing to do with the drugs. It has everything to do with having a healthy community that supports kids, that gives them things to do in their off time. So if you keep kids busy, they're not sitting at home thinking about what can I do to get into trouble, or what can I do to pass the time and not just be here bored. So activities are a thing where my goal long-term, and I'm planning on working with some community partners. There used to be a thing called prescription to play that some of the foundations had, where you could go to your doctor and get a prescription to participate in activities, and then those activities would be funded. I want every activity in Moses Lake. If a kid shows up and they want to partake in it, and maybe they don't have the money at the time, I want the answer to be yes. I'll figure out the money. I'll go to local partners to work on that. But I don't want to be a big, long form that parents have to fill out to prove that they don't have the money. I just want the kid in the activity. They want to do it. Let's do it for them. And that is the kind of thing that that we reviewed some studies from Iceland that not only took the levels of substance abuse down, but it kept them down. And that's exactly what we want to see. We want to see the rate start here, go down to here, and stay at this level. Okay. And that's something that really happened. They were giving out, was it $70 or $700 cards?
400.
$400 cards. I got it wrong, but they were giving out activity cards to every kid, regardless of income. And what they saw long-term was the rates of substance abuse dropped, the rates of crime dropped, the rates of tardiness at school, delinquency, all of those associated things dropped, and they stayed low. And that's something that we can duplicate. And we're not going to be leaning on the government to provide that for us. I think there's some foundations that are aligned with that sort of goal, but give kids something to do and they're not going to get into the trouble. And then we've delayed that moment of uptake to the point that the chances of them becoming dependent on a substance are low. The chances of them committing suicide are lower. The chances of them needing mental health services, of going homeless, of all of these other things that are big problems in society today have really dropped. So that's what we're hoping to see. And that's one that I love talking about, because it doesn't have to be like doom and gloom, like really like mind-killing work. Like, it's fun to think, what can I do to have kids do something today? There's endless opportunities. I'd love to see grandmas in a church reading to kids. Story time with younger kids is something great. One thing I've heard from teachers, kindergarten teachers in particular, is that the amount of kids that show up without ever having picked up a book is scary. And that's something that we can fix if we do it as a community. So that's the kind of things that I like working on. And that's really fun to think about. Like, we could make an impact here.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Do you work with Youth Dynamics?
Yes. Yeah, they're a member of the coalition. Yep. Do you want to do this?
Yeah.
Okay.
One more prevention trail for you. You have a question? Yes, sir.
Would you ever consider lobbying to change the signs that we see at like a McDonald's that say must be 18 to apply, to get that back to 16?
So,
I mean, if you're talking about things for kids to do,
yeah, totally.
that's a big deal. If they can do something and make some money, it's a win-win.
Absolutely. So I think a few people here know that I love public policy work, and we do have a public policy committee within the coalition. That specific issue has not come up, but I mean, I love hearing about it, and that certainly is something that would be great. My son's 17 and he works at the aquatic center, and that's been a great experience for him. He lifeguards there, but that should be available to everybody, not just like good swimmers, so that sort of experience is, it was good in my childhood as well. So definitely, yeah, I'd consider doing that.
That'd take legislation and L&I issues,
Yeah.
but get kids a job,
Mhm.
let them get some money.
Totally.
I have something to add to
Yeah.
that as well. So I know that you're talking about providing activities to students, or kids in the community. Is there some thought as to utilizing existing, parks and rec services and
Yeah.
offering some sort of,
Absolutely.
scholarship of sorts, or even, a lot of there are a lot of kids with certain skills and aptitudes. It would be nice to push them into programs that can, further those, select athletic teams and things of that nature. So hopefully
Yeah.
those avenues are explored so that you're not, reinventing the wheel at every turn.
Definitely. Yeah, no, working with Parks and Rec. So like and we're at the beginning stages of this. This is really where we're going in the future, because in the last 3 years, the coalition has gone from, fairly small group of people to really having representation from throughout our community. We want to make sure that we get every part of the community in. So if certain sectors of our community are not as well represented as I would like to see. I'd like to see more Hispanic involvement in the coalition, and I'd like to see more from the Russian-Ukrainian part of our community. Other than that, like we do have a good amount of people, but to be a community coalition, we need everybody to come and be a part of it, and it's fun. It's I wouldn't be doing it if it was just a bunch of dull work. But there's so many opportunities to do good for our community and prevent some of the problems that people are concerned about that you guys probably hear about at most meetings or a good amount of meetings.
So the last trail, within our coalition, we have the freedom to have committees or work groups on any variety of topics. Our actual implementation programs and strategies, those all have to really be focused on substance use prevention specifically. And there's a lot of rules that come with that, but we can have as many committees as we want for whatever we want. And so what we've started this year is a mental health task force. We've reached out to several of our partners and organizations that we regularly work with to weigh in on this. We just had our first meeting. Was that yesterday? That was yesterday. And the idea behind that is anytime we start talking about these things, it's always brought to the table, well, limited access to mental health resources, which we understand. And then I did list some numbers on here for you as far as what the kids are experiencing. And I do know that I guess Moses Lake is the hub. So our service population is actually 120,000 people, which is ginormous. And to be able to sustain our community as well as all of these outlying communities that come here, relying on big facilities is just, that's a really long-term thing. And there are creative things that we feel can be done in the interim that help to fill in some of those gaps so that we're not waiting for this possibility that's 5-10 years down the road. There are things that we can do now. So we did have a pretty decent turnout from several organizations. I don't know if you want to talk more about.
I do. I love mental health. So we always hear about a stigma about mental health. What I hear from our kids today is a real willingness to work on their mental health, which is encouraging. I've dealt with mental health issues in my past. I have ADHD, and that led to some issues in school where I didn't do as well as I would have liked to. Not anything to do with smarts, but that definitely messed with my head a little bit when I'm like, I'm trying as hard as I can, but I can't focus through school. So one problem that we have in our community is not emergency care. Like when you're in an emergency and you're thinking about suicide or harming yourself or others, like we actually have a good response through Renew and various partners for that. But if you try to do the preventative care or the primary care mental health, you're waiting 6 months at least to get into an appointment with a provider. So what can we do as a community to fix that? Just thinking about like certified providers or, somebody who's a psychiatrist, bringing doctors into the community can be very difficult. And that's highly paid people that, with a low cost of living. And it kind of has to do with our area. If people are used to a big city and the amenities that provides, sometimes it can be a tough sell to have them be an hour and a half away from a Costco. So those sorts of issues mean that we kind of need to grow our own. So we're involved with a couple things that will try to increase our healthcare providers in town. And we're hoping that every region that's similar to ours will do the same, so that when like areas like ours need healthcare providers, there's a pool to draw from instead of just the big city pool that we kind of have now. My family was one of the few that came in, and my wife got a National Health Service Corps scholarship for her medical school, where it paid for medical school, and then we had to work in an underserved area, and we loved it here and we stayed. But I'd like to see that increase so that we can get more providers here locally.
I'm going to mention NAMI a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when we were putting together our task force, naturally, we're reaching out to anybody that would be interested to weigh in on this topic. We reached out to NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Grant County was not at the time being served by NAMI. We had to reach out to the Chelan Douglas chapter, let them know some of the work that we're doing and that we would love for them to be involved. And they said, basically it's been some years that they've wanted to extend into Grant County. They just hadn't yet. And then about 5 days ago, they made it formal and they are now officially also covering Grant County. And what NAMI can do is they have their resources. They'll bring in trainers and they'll train community members to provide peer-to-peer support. They can do that family to family. They can do it on an individual basis. They have a whole menu of things that they can train average community members on how to do these things. And that is a way that we can support ourselves. You're relying a lot on volunteer and goodwill. But I just believe that that's out there. So, but that is a way that we're not sort of beholden to the staffing issues of the larger agencies, and the average person can find a resource, find a person to talk to, and it's not pressing the system any more than it's already pressed.
It also kind of demonstrates that we're using local ideas and local resources to work on local problems. It's not very common to see something develop that quickly where we can actually address an issue just by having a couple conversations, but it does happen. And that's one thing that we achieved that fairly quickly just by a couple conversations. So it's wonderful to see that. This is the last one, right? Do you have
This is the
anything?
big wrap up.
Okay,
This is all you.
I'm ready. So it does take a community to raise a child. Okay. Not all of us are able to have time to spend with our kids. I know there's a large portion of our community where both parents aren't working, they don't have a place to live. So if we're going to do right by our community, I think we need to address those issues and take care of kids. Kids don't ask for the situation they're in. So, you know, we got to do what we can to give them the best chance of success. And so as part of that, you know, I personally take responsibility for the way that our community is. So if there's a problem, I think it's my duty as a community member to address that issue. And I hope that there's enough people out there that feel the same way and would like to join us and working on this, because the community coalition is only as strong as the community that's involved in it. And we're happy with the work we've done, but we got a long ways to go and we'd love to have help. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
First of all, thank you for your work with this. It's very much needed in our community. I appreciate everybody that's involved in doing this. I have a question for city staff. So we fund them $12,000. Where does that come from and how was that number determined?
That's general fund dollars, and that is the amount that they requested probably, I'm guessing 5 years ago. And they use that, and correct me if I'm wrong, they use that to help. So when they have community events and stuff like that, these grants do not allow them to provide like snacks and food and stuff like that to draw people in. So they use some of our funds to help draw people into the community events.
I would say it's a little bit more than that. Definitely is part of it, that we don't have funding to provide some of the basic things within our community, but we've held meetings. I guess the mental health task force is a big one that those city funds allow us to do, because we need to be able to provide the space for people to meet with us. So anytime we've got an issue that comes up that doesn't fit within the very strict confines of a grant that we've received, that's where the city funds are so useful, and every dollar of that is incredibly useful. So it's been really nice to have that.
So is it renewed every year then?
Yeah, I think it just unless they ask for more money, we just keep the same amount in there.
So
We'll
are you
take as
asking
much
for
as you
more
can give
money?
us. Yeah.
I mean,
So-
with inflation and
Yeah,
everything.
well, one of the issues we saw with the CPWI grant is just staffing. It's a county employee that because Renew is our fiscal agent, which is a division of Grant County. So there was a COLA increase for salary and benefits that took up some of that CPWI funding, so that even though we had issues on our strategic plan for our 2-year strategic plan, we couldn't do them because there was all of a sudden an increase. Now, that sort of an increase is not going to be very common. It was associated with the runaway inflation that we were seeing. But there's always unforeseen things that can happen. So, yeah, that's why we have to diversify our funding more too. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Real quickly, sorry, how much of your funding is private?
So that's another issue that we're working on. So since Renew is our fiscal agent as a division of Grant County, we can't even take private donations, I don't believe. So we are working on what's likely in our future is to develop a nonprofit that is not overseeing the coalition necessarily. It could. I need the community to tell me what to do on that. But that way we can work with private donations and private companies more. There's always a way that we could do it like a partnership, so that we don't have to actually accept any money, where we just partner with another organization that will allow us to do the job that we're working on. But it's a little tricky working with government funding under a government agency. So growing pains that we're going through, like we're getting stuff done, but we need to solve some of those issues.
Any other questions from the council? Comments?
All right.
Yes, thank you for the report.
Thank you.
We can move on to the citizens' communications. Council invites citizen comments to hear from the public on matters before the council or relevant to the council's business. Each speaker will be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes. Make sure you address your comments to the council, not to staff or the audience. The council may request staff research comments received for potential future action. Please take private conversations outside. When you are called upon to speak, please begin with stating your name and city of residence for the record. And we will start with Rod Richardson.
Rod Richardson, I live here in the city. I'm here today as the chairman of the Moses Lake Municipal Airport Commission. We've had several issues arise at the airport recently. I don't know how much is made back, and this probably isn't the time to air everything, but we've had a lot of trouble getting things communicated and accomplished with staff. There was some communication issues with another group that wanted to do something that caused a huge issue a couple of Saturdays ago. We have stuff that we thought gave us power and decision-making ability for the airport. And every time we have something come up, we're promptly told that we don't. One of the tasks that we were tasked with was beautification of the airport, pulling weeds, mowing the lawn, spraying the weeds. We had a commissioner that volunteers his time, a lot of his time, had an L&I claim that we got a letter that said that it was denied because he wasn't instructed or authorized to do the work, where we have a policy document that, as far as the commission, was created with Ms. Williams, Allison, when she was here. It was given to staff to finish, and we've never seen the finishing of that. So they said, well, council has not approved this, so you can't do that. So without taking on the risk myself or any of the commissioners volunteering time, we're not covered by L&I is what we've been told, unless we go through and ask specific permission from Public Works for any activity like that we want to do, which we don't believe is what council wanted when they created the commission. We believed, and we were told we were put in place to take care of some of these things, to get the city separated from that, so that we could do the volunteer work. It doesn't cost the city money or time. And then every time we're told a process, do this, so that you can do this. And then we come up to something and then staff, nope, can't do it that way. Here's why you can't do it that way, which is fine if we can't do it, but we're never given that information beforehand. We get down the process, we get down the road, something happens, and then we're told, nope, it can't happen. You've been doing it wrong this whole entire time. So we've been very frustrated. We've had some meeting. Kevin came to our commission meeting. I thank him very much for coming, and there was a lot of airing of grievances that day. I think that we have maybe a little better path forward in looking at that in the future, but we still have some time now that we have people that are willing to volunteer. We don't believe the commission was created to ask permission from Public Works to go mow the lawn, to go pull the weeds. We know there's rules we need to follow. I know that spraying the weeds has been a big issue in how things had been done previously, and I think we got that resolved. Staff did provide a little bit of input on that to help us determine whether we could get somebody trained to actually do the spraying under the city's license. And we were fine with that, but it's taken 8 months to get to that point to where we got information, yet this person can go get trained to do that. So we have been neutered, for lack of a better term, in doing anything out at the airport, and it's frustrating us completely. We're a bunch of doers. We all love that airport. Every single one of us is out there almost every single day. So we would like to engage staff more constructively, but also get the support of the council to help define exactly what we are responsible for, what we can administer ourselves, what we need to engage staff. We have a policy document that we created that was given to staff last December that we don't know where the final product is at this point. So we'd just like to engage council to help us determine where we really sit on this. Because if we are responsible for that, we'd like to be held responsible for that so that we can do the work. But yeah, that's all I have to say. If there's any questions, I would love to provide any answers.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
So just to make sure I'm clear, there's a policy document that you've been waiting for from the city that will hopefully clear up what you can or can't do without
Yes.
always having to check in with the city.
Correct. Allison, Ms. Williams, she gave us an outline. We met with staff and said, we'll divide and conquer this. The commission did our part. We voted to approve it, and then we handed it off to staff, and we've never seen it. Like I believe the email was on December 6th when it was emailed to staff.
So I'm going to direct this question to the city.
So
Where are we on that timeline?
So I just looked at this document last week. We are working on it. I will also add that I reached out to WCI, our insurer, who doesn't insure the airport, but they are our city insurer. I got some sample volunteer handbook and some volunteer waivers. I'm modifying those, and I'm going to go to probably their next commission meeting, present that to them, have them take a look at it. So that would give them a handbook from the city with kind of the rules on what can and can't be done, and then a waiver that they can fill out. And you can fill in there that, you're going to mow the lawn every week or whatever, pull weeds, and have that. And then we have that on file. And I think that would probably cover us for the most part. So I'm working, since our meeting on Thursday, I have been working on ways to try to mend the relationship we have with the airport commission and find ways to be able to work together.
Not satisfied?
That is an excellent step in the right direction.
So
I'd like to ask some clarification. We've changed the airport board or committee or commission however many times that since I've been on council.
Just
What is
once.
what is the power that the commission has to?
I'll start, and then Catherine may want to have input. The municipal airport is a city-owned facility, it's city-owned property. Okay, and there's some buildings out there that we also own. the commission aren't city employees. Okay, they're the volunteer group that takes care of the I guess the workings of the airport. But ultimately, decisions concerning the airport grounds, any liability situation, stuff like that, has got to come from a member of staff because they're making decisions that could ultimately put the city in a liable situation or create some sort of expense to the city. And so for those reasons is why that we have the commission responding or communicating with staff for some of those decisions, because somebody on staff has to make decisions where it could create a financial risk to the city or a liability risk to the city. So, and Catherine, you got anything you want to add?
No, other than to remind council that you adopted in 2022 in your chapter 2.08 regarding city commissions and boards, a specific section on the municipal airport and its duties. So you might want to review that.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Can I follow?
Yeah, go ahead.
So does that make it a little bit clearer for you guys and the airport commission and who's really making decisions?
Yes, this and not just with this commission, but previously about how to be volunteers. And then when we had a situation arise, that's when this is all, oh no, that's not correct. And a claim was denied by city staff. Kevin alluded that there may be a way to resolve that. I have faith in Kevin that we'll be able to come to some resolution, but a lot of this is kind of the way it's been working for us, is we get a direction, we kind of head that way, and then that's not the way we should have gone. And maybe that's for everybody. I don't know. I only know what I've been involved with since we were created in April of last year. So we've only been doing this, a year and a half now almost. But it has been very, very hard to get direction to be able to do things without, running afoul of something in the city, in the code, something. And I think we all rely on staff to provide that. And we just feel like we've been very kept out of the loop on that kind of stuff, unfortunately.
Councilmember Scogden.
You guys are adults.
Yes.
And it seems odd that you would have to ask Mother, may I? I don't know if there can be a blanket. You can pull weeds this year.
That's where I go back to that volunteering waiver that I got from WCI. I think they could fill that out and say, hey, every week we plan on mowing the lawn. And that's in the waiver. And so if something happens while they're mowing the lawn, it's covered because we have a record of it and the person has signed off that they're going to do it. So I think there's a way. Obviously I'll have to work with Catherine on this, but I think there's a way to do some sort of whoever is doing the volunteer work signs this agreement, and then that way they're covered. And with that would come acknowledging that you've read the handbook, and so you know what the rules are and things like that. So
I know sometimes I'm reminded that the previous councils have approved such and such, whether that was Rich, when we had the discussion about, what needed a permit to have a parade or whatever. And some of those things in there were kind of goofy. If we could have a copy of the agreement or whatever was signed, in 2020 or 2022, the one that you alluded to, Catherine.
That's in code.
Okay.
Yeah, that's in code. I'm talking about something separate than that.
Okay. Well, I mean, if they're goofy things, let's deal with them and change them.
That's why I'm trying to find a way to be able to work through these issues so that we're not talking about these in the future.
Good.
All right. Thank you for your time, council.
Thank you. Ron. And I can't quite get your last name. Piercy, okay.
So I am Ron Piercy. I'm the president of EAA Chapter 355 located at Municipal Airport. EAA was created in 1953 by a gentleman named Paul Poberezny in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Our chapter began in 1970 at the Moses Lake Municipal Airport. So what is EAA? EAA stands for the Experimental Aircraft Association. My personal opinion is that the name needs to be changed to something like the Sport Aviation Association, because most of us are not experimenters. We are airplane enthusiasts, pilots, and airplane owners. So our club has held a fly-in at the municipal airport for some 50 years, typically on Memorial Day weekend. This year we decided to have a barbecue fly-in, was September 16th. The city found out that we were going to have this fly-in, and I was informed by email that since we were past a 30-day window, we needed to pay a $200 non-refundable fee to be considered by the city for this event, plus have a $2 million liability insurance policy. I was informed that if we did not have the fee and the liability policy by Friday, that the city would close the airport and stop our event. I don't know how you buy through EAA, we get a $1 million liability insurance coverage policy that we pay for yearly. Costs our club $300 a year. We have to inform the EAA headquarters of our event and when we get this coverage. So the city wanted an additional $1 million worth of liability coverage for a one-day event. I don't know how you buy that for one day. I told by email that we've been having this event at the airport for 50 years, and I was informed by return email that we have been in violation of this rule since 2016, but who knew? I was threatened that if we didn't have the insurance and pay the fee by Friday, that the city would close the airport and stop our event. On Thursday, I made the decision that we would just move our event to another airport, and we informed the pilot community by social media that we were going to go to another airport, but I did not tell the city that. I thought, well, we'll just see. The city carried through with their threat to close the airport. I think this was an extreme and uncalled for measure. This is like closing I-90 because you don't want some person or some group to use the freeway. This airport is part of a national transportation system. It's not just Moses Lake City Airport. And there are federal dollars invested in this airport. I could see the city preventing us from using the clubhouse, which our club moved from Hanford to the airport, installed it and donated it to the city, but not closing the airport. I already mentioned that our club pays an annual fee that we get our $1 million worth of liability insurance. I've said we've been having this fly-in for 50 years and haven't had a problem. Something we found out on Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, is that if we have an event with less than 75 people or a gathering of less than 75 people, that it doesn't meet the city's definition of an event. So inform me if I'm wrong. For less than 75 people, I don't think we needed a permit or the insurance. We plan on having another fly-in come Memorial Day weekend next year, so we need to get this all sorted out. And I might also mention that this piece of property was given by the railroad to the city for an airport, and it used to go from the present day airport west about a quarter of a mile. So it's about a 40-acre piece of property that was given to the city for an airport. It used to be 5 runways out there. Presently, we only occupy the little strip on the east side, and the city took over the rest of it. So I guess that's all I got to say. Then I'll answer questions if somebody wants to ask.
Questions or comments from the council? Councilmember Schwartz?
Yeah, I had a question about a comment you made about the 30-day period of time before the event. And your statement was that because you fell within the 30-day window, that you were required to pay the $200 and have $2 million of liability insurance. Is that accurate?
Yes, I was informed that we were supposed to apply 60 days in advance
Yep.
and pay a $75 fee. If we were beyond 60 days, we had to add $25, which made it 100. But if we were past 30 days, it was another 100, so it became 200.
Is that accurate, or how our fees work?
I know there are increased fees as the closer you get to the event, because it's takes staff time to review everything, and there's some sort of a escalated increase depending on how close you get to the event. That sound accurate?
And is that for any facility?
Yeah, it's for any event. So,
Am I correct? It's less than 75 people is not an event?
no, that was one portion of it. This was advertised as an event that would qualify for the city. So.
Deputy Mayor Martinez?
I just wanted to speak to Dustin's question. And you as well. I was hoping or trying to plan an event while I was running for city council, and I was late in planning it. So yeah, I incurred extra or an increased fee, which was non-refundable, and in the end was not able to put together the event. So it is a tough financial lesson to learn, but yes, you need to try and plan ahead. And if the event doesn't go off, you don't get that money back. So it's been like that for a while. To confirm though, them having a $1 million liability insurance for the EEA does not fulfill the requirement of the city for a $2 million
Correct.
liability.
Which is in code.
Right. And if I recall correctly, for anybody that needs event insurance, not that this is an advertisement in any way, but there is a gentleman here in town that does event insurance frequently. And so if you would like his information, I can get that to you.
So Deputy Mayor Martinez, we've reached out to him and asked him to quote insurance for the city next year. That includes the basic coverage that we currently have, and then also secondary, give us a price of what it would cost for the basic insurance plus event insurance for the entire year. So he's providing that to the city.
Great. Thank you.
So question for me, if we plan our event on Memorial Day weekend in conjunction with Spring Festival, can we combine with Spring Festival under their insurance?
I believe you could, because I think all the acts are part of Spring Fest. So if you could coordinate with Spring Fest and they can add you to the event, I think that would probably work.
Sounds like a reasonable solution for that event. You'll help me?
We appreciate you bringing these concerns to us.
Thank you.
Andrew Copen?
My name is Andrew Colpin. I live in Pelican Point, Moses Lake. Last week, I took the initiative to create a Facebook group called Moses Lake Events. The idea behind this group was simple. I wanted to bridge the gap between event organizers and our vibrant community. My goal was to bring us all together, ensuring us that none of us miss out on the fantastic events that are happening right here in our city. To say that this group was sorely needed in our community is an understatement. For far too long, I've experienced the frustration of discovering events in Moses Lake only after they have already taken place. But in just about a week, this Facebook group has exceeded all expectations, growing exponentially to over 600 members with over 3,000 hits. It's remarkable how quickly it has become a central hub for posting and discovering public events in Moses Lake. It's a testament to how active our community truly is, more so than it might appear on the surface. Now let's shift our focus to another pressing topic, which is the automatic license plate readers. While we've come together to celebrate our vibrant community events, we must also remain vigilant about the issues that affect our privacy and civil liberties. During my last address to the council, I inquired if anyone in council had read the data sharing agreements. Unfortunately, no one in the council has confirmed that they have, so I'm assuming they haven't. This raises concerns about the licensing agreements and data sharing agreements between our city, a secretive company known as Flock, and other jurisdictions. What's particularly troubling is that members of the public are denied access to the data collected, while our city shares this information freely with undisclosed entities. From a legal standpoint, we must consider our Fourth Amendment rights. It is unconstitutional for law enforcement to attach GPS trackers to vehicles without a warrant. And these automatic license plate readers currently serve as a workaround for the Fourth Amendment. The question that arises is, how many cameras do we need before someone challenges this as a violation of our fundamental rights? 1, 2, 5, 20? Law enforcement advocates for more of these cameras, potentially turning our streets into surveillance zones. However, there is a lack of concrete evidence to suggest that these cameras effectively reduce crime rates. We must also be mindful of international implications. Imagine how a Chinese dissident would feel knowing that these cameras can potentially track their movement in the United States, potentially putting them at risk. It also amazes me that the city can move so fast on installing cameras that violate our rights, but is so slow on many other issues in the community that we heard tonight. As we embrace the power of community through Moses Lake events, let us also remember the paramount importance of protecting our rights and liberties in this digital age. Together, we can ensure that our community remains both vibrant and safeguarded. Thank you.
Councilmember Scogg.
Well, actually, that button was for Rod, but didn't get a chance to say something. Thank you, Andrew, for bringing up what you bring up. I think there are some good points. I don't necessarily agree with all of them, but I think it's something worth considering.
So did you read the data sharing agreements?
Pardon?
Did you read the data sharing agreements or the licensing agreements?
Absolutely not.
Alicia DeLuigi.
Alicia DeLuigi, Lisa from Moses Lake. Since there's a lot of Tom Dent's friends here tonight, please don't tell them I'm wearing my hat backwards. I don't want to get a lecture. Thank you. So I wanted to ask if you guys had the opportunity to read over the email that I sent with some directive considerations. Thank you. I appreciate that. Also, the airport is our friends, and I want to say thank you so much for working with them and helping them resolve any miscommunication errors, because this is a small community and it's important for us to all work together to succeed. Really quick. So the Moses Lake Community Coalition, Matt and Megs are super duper fantastic. They're very modest and humble, but these guys are like steamrollers, rock and rollers, just super motivated, like the busy, effective. They didn't discuss the youth mental health first aid training that they offer. And they're also looking at possibly bringing in people to be trained too, so that we can expand that out. And they also recently did it's like a positive statement training. So like when looking at numbers, instead of saying 1/3 of the people are doing drugs, 2/3 of the people aren't. So just that switch in the way that you say things and the switch in perception. let's see. Oh, okay. So Youth Dynamics has a fundraiser and auction coming up on October 14th, and I believe you guys are all invited. And if you guys want to, thank you to those that have already donated, like for gift baskets, silent auction stuff. But if you want to, what I'll do is I'll leave this information with Deb and she can scan it in and if whatever's clever, but thank you for those that have already donated. And I hope to see some of you guys in attendance because anything that has to do with kids and providing a safe place for kids, and my foundation is Christianity. So Kids in Christ, that's just super awesome. And I'm all about that. So Saturday, you guys had your budget meeting and there were some numbers that we didn't quite have. I believe that the city did get them today. And whoops, sorry. Give me 1 second. I've got to pull them up. Okay, so what we're looking at is in preliminary numbers. They were emailed this morning. The regular levy value was about 3,643,000, plus or minus a little bit. The excess levy is 3,618,000, almost 319,000, and the new construction is 53,364,929. And the levy rate for 2023 for the city of Moses Lake was almost 3 billion for an amount of $735,242.56. And that's based off of the rate per 1,000 of assessed value. The IPD came in at about 3.6. This is good news, which allows everyone a 1% growth. So they definitely, the city wants to definitely ask for the 101% increase. And let's see, about 2 billion was the overall value for last year for the county. With the new construction for the county is a little over 420 million. And you can ask for the 1% that, let's see, they can only ask for 1% over what was collected last year. And then the levy on the new construction is theirs and not included in that 1%. So that's really, really good news for us with regards to that 1%, additional 1% that we can be getting. But it's important that you guys direct the finance to make sure that you put in for it. But well, I don't have all the numbers, and this is something that the finance director is going to have to further explain the details with you guys. It does look like that we might have to make some budget cuts, but good news, definitely not even close to what we originally thought. And in further good news, because the county has gotten a mega surplus, then there's a possibility that we can get some additional funding through them as well. And so lastly, again, I'd like to reiterate with regards to the Moses Lake Community Coalition, we should be getting our opioid settlement funding soon with the county and with the city. And so I would definitely like to see some of that funding go towards the Moses Lake Community Coalition, because that's 100% in alignment with what they do. And if we could give them some kind of raise, since they haven't asked for anything, because they do a lot more than what they even told you guys. Does anybody have any questions? Yep, you're welcome. Happy to help.
Thank you. I just
Yeah.
want to piggyback on that. Sean Salas, he's the director at Youth Dynamics. He asked me to say something since he couldn't be here. He is inviting the council and staff to the auction. That is October 14th, 7 p.m. He would like an RSVP by October 6th. So I would suggest we direct that with staff. So if we have a quorum, that it can be announced properly. Okay, thank you. Jeremy Nolan.
Good evening. So Jeremy Nolan, I'm in the Campus Place in Moses Lake. I want to talk briefly about the 2024 budget. So I appreciate the opportunity for the 2024 budget review this last Saturday. That was obviously a lot of work that was put in by the staff. So I appreciate all that was done there. I have a few comments and questions, some preliminary observations about that budget I'd like to share with you. First is, I was wondering if there is some kind of guiding financial policy objectives or metrics targets for the city that the city can manage to and see how the 2024 budget fits that. I didn't see that in the document. If there is, that'd be great if that could be made part of the publicly available document. Second is, would like to know if the city uses a forward financial forecasting modeling as well. Something that looks forward 5 to 10 years beyond just the next budget year. If they do, that'd be also great to have that included in the publicly available information. I bring that up because if they don't, that can lead to some significant financial consequences. The PUD used to only do a very short look ahead, and that led to some significant budget issues, financial constraints with some poor debt structuring. Right, so it can really lead to some financial, potholes, if you will, if you're not looking out very far and only looking at the next budget year. So, highly looking forward to that kind of like financial forecast looking forward. Next, wanted to talk about looking at some kind of a summary breakdown by expense type, not just by fund type. So there's a lot of fund type breakdown in throughout the budget document. And that was great, but I'm looking for something, for example, like salaries and benefits as a lump sum, looking not just under each fund type, but aggregated so that you could look at that. So supplies and services, so that you could look at those as an aggregate, not just under each individual fund type. So you get an idea like how much that category, expense type category is changing, from the budget year, not just, having to look at it and, add it up yourselves. Additionally, looking to have some kind of a breakdown into something like a price volume analysis. This would be a summary for determining what is the driver of the change. For example, under a salaries and benefits, you could look at how much the increase is. Is it adding because of a headcount or hours change in what the employees are working, or versus is it a pricing change by, salaries or benefits costs over that time period? Looking at this can really help break down like what is a real driver of a lot of the change in the budget over, for the various fund types as well as the expense types over a period of time. This is looking at not only, the next budget year, but this could also be looking into how has this changed over the last several years. They gave it several years of budget and actual, the 2023 budget as well as actual history. So you can see what the driver was there, as well as if you're doing a forecast period out, what the driver is going forward over a number of years, what their expectations on that are. Also, I had a concern where I heard several of the business unit directors saying that they were budgeting certain areas conservatively. And usually that was in regards to the revenue projections. So this really hamstrings your finance team, right? So this becomes a problem if various unit directors are each taking a conservative, sometimes, probably different levels of conservatism into it and feeding that information to your finance team. It gives them a real, skewed view of what the organization is going to look like. So put your finance team and your finance director at a real disadvantage. I would recommend looking at, needing to plan to an expected results overall, and then understanding a risk analysis and confidence intervals around those results. And that would allow the conservatism, whether it's the finance team, administration, the council, to look at building that in as an overall, if it was so desired, at an aggregate level with the overall district. Overall, I really appreciate that this is a great first look at the 2024 budget, and hope there's a lot more data that is going to be coming forward, allowing the city council to make a much more informed decision. So, thank you.
Any questions or comments from the council? The only thing that I would say is she did provide a brief slideshow. But in there we had a council retreat or council workshop going over our council priorities. So then with the directors, so that they can hear what our priorities are, and then they form the budget around that. Okay, yeah.
I appreciate
they didn't go over it very
I appreciate that. Maybe I didn't state this well. This is like long-term, not just this city council is looking for the next budget, but this is like, what is the city's guiding financial policy, strategic objective metrics for a long-term view for the organization that you're planning to, not simply in the next budget cycle, what your priorities are in that cycle.
Okay,
Yeah.
yep, thanks for the clarification. Any other questions? Thank you for the
Thank you.
comments. Mr. Hunt will do yours. We pulled that item to a new business, so we'll discuss it then. We moved it back to new business to discuss it as an individual item. As a mayor's report, I have a couple things, two different proclamations, so I'll read. The first one is the National Fire Prevention Week proclamation. Whereas the city of Moses Lake is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting our city. And whereas fire is a serious public safety concern, both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire. And whereas cooking is a leading cause of home fires in the United States. Whereas 2 of every 5 home fires start in the kitchen, with 31% of these fires resulting from unattended cooking. And whereas more than half of reported non-fatal home cooking fire injuries occurred when the victims tried to fight the fire themselves. And whereas children under 5 face a higher risk of non-fire burns associated with cooking than being burned in a cooking fire. And whereas the city of Moses Lake's residents should turn pot handles towards the back of the stove, keep a 3-foot kid-free zone around the stove, oven, and other things that could get hot, watch what they heat, and set a timer to remind them that they are cooking. And whereas working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires almost in half. And whereas the city of Moses Lake's fire department is dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education. And whereas the 2023 Fire Prevention Week theme, Cooking Safety Starts With You, pay attention to fire prevention, effectively serves to remind us to stay alert and use caution when cooking to reduce the risk of kitchen fires. Therefore, I, Don Myers, the mayor of Moses Lake, do hereby proclaim October 8th through the 14th, 2023 as Fire Prevention Week in Moses Lake, and I urge all people of Moses Lake to check their kitchens for fire hazards and use safe cooking practices during Fire Prevention Week 2023, and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of the city of Moses Lake's fire and emergency services. Thank you, Chief, and thank you to your crew. Next one is the Constitution Week proclamation. This was requested by the Kernitsa members as the Constitution was amended in September 17th, 236 years ago. So whereas the Constitution of the United States of America, the guardian of our liberties, embodies the principles of limited government and a republic dedicated to rule by law. And whereas September 17th, 2023 marks the 236th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention. And whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document in its memorable anniversary and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. And whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of a proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now therefore, we by virtue of the authority vested in us as City Council of the City of Moses Lake, Washington, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through the guardian of our liberties. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of the city to be affixed this 13th day of September of the year of our Lord 2022. Thank you. Last on my report, we did receive a letter and photo from our sister city that was sent by Kimberly Matthews, and acknowledging our gift of the Kimberly Matthews Wheaton prints that we sent to them. And they're working on restarting the student exchange. I also received a nice letter from the mayor of Yanazawa, and I need to respond to that as well. So I'll just read this email he sent. I'd like to offer my sincerest gratitude for displaying the commemorative stole, Mountain and Moon, which is right back there, that we gifted to you. In addition to sending us the picture of all of you with the stole and the works by local artist Kimberly Matthews Wheaton. Even from far away, Yanazawa, it felt as if I was viewing Moses Lake's warm landscapes up close and in person. I was reminded of the importance of exchange with everyone in Moses Lake at the ceremony last October, commemorating the 40th anniversary of our sister city affiliation. Currently, we are in the midst of working on visiting Moses Lake once again and restarting our exchange student and mutual visit programs. When we have more details, we will be in touch. I'm gratefully looking forward to the day when we can once again meet, socialize, and exchange in person with all of you from Moses Lake. Dustin, is there anything that you'd like to add? I know you're...
No, other than I appreciated the letter. Thank you.
Yeah. And that is all that I have for the mayor's report. Thank you. Additional business. Does council wish to have any business brought to a future meeting? Deputy Mayor Martinez.
I think this is where I do this. So at the State of the Lake presentation, there was a community member who lives on Marina Drive that said that there are failing septic tanks and different residences on that strip. And so I'm directing staff to investigate that to see if they are illegally dumping, whether it's on purpose or by accident. We can investigate that.
I'll talk to staff about it. I'm guessing that that's probably a health district.
I spoke with the health district, with Teresa, and so the city, since they are within the city staff needs to investigate it, and then city staff needs to contact the health board because they're the ones with the authority to fix or make a decision on the septic.
I'll talk to staff tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, with no other additional business, we can move on to the city manager's report. Turn it over to your interim city manager, Chief Fuhr.
Thank you, Mayor. Just the first thing, all but one of you were able to attend the animal shelter tour last week. We had some discussions out there after the event. I was going to bring it up at the budget retreat on Saturday. However, seeing the disparity between the revenues and the expenditures, I think we need to work on that before I bring it back to you. So when we have our second budget meeting, which will hopefully be sometime in October, depending on when we get the numbers from the county, I may bring that back up and have a discussion. The commissioners, the Board of County Commissioners, are interested in doing something with the city. I received a text from Commissioner Jones last Friday, and he would like to have a meeting. So we'll figure out kind of what they want to do, and I'll bring it back to the council. And then on LTAC, 2 weeks ago, the LTAC committee met and determined the dates, and I'm going to turn it over to Assistant City Manager Rich Huebner.
Thank you, Kevin. Just an update for the council this evening. As Kevin mentioned, the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee met on Monday afternoon, September 11th, under the chairmanship of Councilmember Eck. The committee members took a look at a timeline for the 2024 application cycle for LTAC, as well as a review of the LTAC guidelines and historical funding. So those were the agenda items at their meeting. They did not make any changes to the application itself other than to update for current dates. That was published by staff the following day with announcements going out on social media and the city's website to get that information out to the public. The application deadline is 12 noon on Friday, October 6th. So a couple weeks left to go to get your applications in for tourism funding for 2024. The committee also set their next 2 meeting dates to have presentations from the applicants as well as make their allocation recommendations. So the committee will be meeting here in the council chambers on Wednesday, October 11th at 2 p.m. to receive the presentations from the applicants. And then they'll be meeting the following morning, the 12th, here again in council chambers at 9 a.m. to make their recommendations for allocations for 2024. So it is staff's anticipation that those recommendations will be on your agenda for your review and consideration for your meeting on October 24th. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I do have one thing. We still have one vacancy on that committee. Can you explain what the requirements are to be on that committee?
Absolutely, Mr. Mayor. So the requirements for LTAC come from the state law that enacted the lodging tax itself. So there's a section in RCW 6728/1817 that details, I'm impressed that I have that off the top of my head, that detail the requirements for membership on a lodging tax advisory committee. The committee must be chaired by an elected official of the government agency. And as I mentioned earlier, that is Councilmember Eck is the chair of the committee, the council member from the city. And then there are at minimum 2 seats of each type that I'm about to describe. And I say at minimum, for each number that you have on one, you have to have an equal number on the other. So the minimum of 2 seats on each side is for 2 seats for representatives of businesses that collect the tax. So hotels, and as that definition of lodging establishment has expanded, it can be hotels, it can be bed and breakfasts, it can be any facility that collects and remits lodging tax to the state. So 2 seats for organizations that collect the tax and 2 seats for organizations that are eligible to receive funding. So it's kind of a built-in conflict of interest in the state law, but you need to have representation from organizations that are eligible to receive the proceeds under the tax. And those are organizations that do tourism marketing, that host festivals and events that are designed to attract tourism, or that run tourism's focused facilities that are owned either by a nonprofit agency or by a government agency. So again, if you decide you want to have 3 hoteliers, then you need to have at least 3 representatives of eligible agencies and so forth. The one vacancy that is on the committee is a hotelier. So if there is a representative of an agency that collects the tax that is interested in contributing to how those funds are used, the city would be happy to receive a notice of interest from a hotelier that would be interested in serving on the committee.
And I believe they can apply online, right?
They can apply online, absolutely. They can reach out to city staff and we'd be happy to send them a direct link with all the information and bring that forward for your consideration, Mr. Mayor, to make an appointment.
All right. So if you know anybody that fits that specification, and let them know we are looking for more assistance on the LTAC committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have anything else?
Mayor, that is the city manager's report.
Thank you. Consent agenda, all items listed are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. Need a motion to approve the consent agenda minus item K.
So move.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm abstaining due to the conflict.
Okay, thank you. Those opposed? Motion passes. Next item, old business, the museum lighting and solar panel project.
So, Mr. Mayor, we do not have Mr. Baltzel with us this evening, who is listed as the staff contact. We do have 2 representatives from McKinstry who have presented to you before. They're here to provide an update on the project and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Appreciate you guys seeing us tonight. Since this has been going for interesting evening. We're here tonight, We'd like to try to get council approval for moving forward with the museum lighting project that we had proposed, and then along with the solar plus storage grant that you guys were awarded from Department of Commerce, State of Washington. In October, starting in 2021, City of Moses Lake approached McKinstry to evaluate numerous projects throughout the city, through citywide. We spent the last couple of years going through those, working with different officials with the city, citywide lighting, space planning, the zero escaping projects, along with the museum lighting and a couple other ones. Those ones were all kind of turned down to the necessity for the museum lighting due to the fact that the incandescent light bulbs that they're used, the bulbs that are currently being used in there are no longer in production, need to be replaced. Adequate lighting in the museum to kind of amplify the space into the proper way, kind of give it the best view for the public. That one, and then on the same day that we presented that, you guys were also awarded the grant from the Department of Commerce for the solar and the battery storage that would be implemented. We would like to see have you guys approve those so that we can get under contract with the Department of Enterprise Services and the City of Moses Lake so that we can move forward and expedite the museum lighting project and try to have it done here within before Thanksgiving of this year. And then as the mandates come out from the Department of Commerce and the availability begins starting all the work on the solar project.
Any questions, comments? We have a few. Starting with Deputy Mayor Martinez.
This is probably more a question for city staff, like how many incandescent bulbs do we have? And what's the plan for them if we go to LED? Are we selling them in the black market so that we have money for our budget? Or not that I'm suggesting we do anything illegal, but you know.
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that. Speaking on behalf of the museum, though, I do know that this project is something of a necessity for them. They're really looking at this as they kind of have to get this done. I would defer to Josh McPherson on the incandescent bulb question.
We just need to.
Josh, microphone, please. Sorry, Josh, I tried to keep you out of it.
Yeah, so we currently don't have any additional in stock. So nothing to sell.
Feeling a little nefarious in here right now.
Councilmember Scogden.
I'm going to have to get reminded as far as the numbers we're talking about. One, the museum, the whole relighting here, the dollar amount of that and where that fund comes from. And then the solar panel battery stuff, the dollar amount of that and where those funds come from.
Oh, yes, sir. So the museum lighting project is funds that have already been allocated from 2023 budget.
Okay,
And
that's from our pocket.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
yes,
That's
so that is City of Moses Lake paying McKinstry for that project.
okay. And that dollar amount was
385,000. I'm rounding a little bit.
385,
Correct.
Yes.
400.
And then the solar plus storage is the total, I'm gonna round the numbers just because I don't have the exact numbers, is a $2.1 million project. 70% of that is a grant from the Department of Commerce that you guys have been awarded. The other 30% is funds that the City of Moses Lake uses through their budget, but is reimbursed to the investment tax, the ITC, investment tax credit. So there's a zero investment for the City of Moses Lake on that.
How did that $600,000 go away one more time?
So the investment, so last year, they passed the investment tax credit for municipalities. Investment tax credit used to be only for private citizens. They passed it for municipalities so that projects like this
renewable natural gas projects that they're trying to push forward with with the infrastructure program, so that municipalities can get a grant from their state or the federal, from the feds. And then the money that they put into it will get back. So if it's 100%, the 100% total is 2.1 million. The government gives you 70% and the investment tax.
So Councilmember Scott, we met earlier today about this. So the $600,000 that the city would provide in general fund dollars would more than likely have to go into some sort of a fund showing that the money is there. And then when the project is done, then we would get reimbursed those dollars. So we would be at a net zero when the project is done, but that $600,000 we wouldn't be able to use until the project was done. It would be earmarked for that project.
But then we wouldn't owe it until the project was done either.
Say that again. Yeah, oh, I would assume so. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Councilmember Schwartz.
Yeah, I just had a question about the genesis of all of this. I understand you explained briefly that the city approached McKinstry, but I guess I just wanted a more clear understanding of exactly how that process worked. I mean, was it identified that the lighting was obsolete? Is that how the conversation got started? Or is this something where McKinstry may have approached the city?
No, so state of Washington passed regulations when it came to clean energy and energy usage for different buildings throughout the city. And so McKinstry works with multiple municipalities across the state of Washington. I was not here, so I cannot tell you that Moses Lake came to us and said, hey, can you take a look at these things? Or if we reached out to Moses Lake and said, hey, we'd like to talk to you about this and see what the needs that you are seeing for your city. What I do know is that we were given a list of different things that Moses Lake stated as what they would like to see improved within their city as far as energy conservation and energy projects. Included the xeriscaping, the space planning for the annex building, the citywide lighting project, and there was a couple other ones. The animal shelter was one that they had looked at. There's a few other ones that they looked at. And through going through all these, through the different investment grade audits and researching all these, it was determined that because of the necessity for the museum, that was the primary focus. And then, of course, once again, then you guys got chosen for the solar project.
Sorry.
That's okay.
As we proceed, so there's two separate projects entirely. So for the lighting portion of it, is there a bid process that then occurs?
No, so we're considered an ESCO. So we were chosen as an ESCO from Moses Lake through DES. And what an ESCO is we're allowed to, there's an RCW, and I cannot, unlike Rich, I cannot spout out the RCW off the top of my head, but there's an RCW that allows municipalities to choose for a design build versus a design bid build. When you do a design bid build, you have to pay an engineering firm to design it. Then it has to go out to bid. You go for the lowest bidder, and then they go that. As a design build, we give you a guaranteed maximum price, which was what we provided here just a few minutes in that round number, that we guarantee that this will not cost more than that. If it costs more than that, then we absorb any extra cost that comes with it. Then we also take a look at energy savings and different aspects that we can provide the city for that.
Okay, but the way that this is being presented to us tonight is we're going to make one motion for both projects.
So both projects are being under contract for DES. So you've chosen Ms. Kintry as your ESCO. We're presented these projects. We want to be able to move forward with the museum lighting because that as a necessity, and we have a good timeline to get that underway. The solar plus storage is a long-term project, but will not be completed till 2025 just due to the availability of the battery storage units. So that's a longer term one, but we'd like to get them both under contract so we can get all the planning done finish up the planning for the solar and begin that process also.
So was the question, was it one contract for both deals?
Yes, it is a combined contract with DES for both projects.
How many square feet are in this building? Josh?
Around 42,000.
Around 42,000. We got $100 a foot for lights.
It's sorry, it's more the control system is the expensive part. Removing the existing controls and installing something much simpler.
And there's actually a little bit more to that, council member. So the project, the actual cost of the project for the museum, the actual lighting and controls. 212,000. The other is, the remaining is for the investment grade audit that we have performed over the last couple of years for the different facilities. So to pay us for the work that we've done and now the project.
So we're running a contract to pay you for work that you've already done? And if we don't do the contract, you don't get paid for work you've already done?
Negative, sir. If you don't move forward with the contract, then you owe us $186,000 on top of that.
If we don't go forward.
Correct. You still owe us for the work that we've done as far as the investment grade audit on the other work.
So the 180,000 is part of the 400,000.
Correct.
It's split between, I think, that and the solar program.
Yeah.
So.
And if we just did the 400,000 and not do the solar panel stuff?
Solar panels don't cost you anything, sir.
Well, I mean, I understand the concept, but the whole.
I understand this, sir, but I mean, so you got a grant for $1.448 million, almost $1.5 million from the Department of Commerce. The federal government is going to refund you the 30% of these back to you, so it washes out as a net zero. It's been that way. That is how it was designed and set up when they wrote the grant. And in the letter that when the city of Moses Lake accepted the grant, that was the definition of what was going on in it. So yes, you have to have money and you have to show that you have matching funds, but those matching funds are returned to you.
I just find the whole system just seems goofy to self-serving. I don't know.
I understand, sir. I completely and totally understand. I mean, I see your point of view, and I'd love to have a conversation with you afterwards. And if you want to talk more, there's some more information I can give you.
Okay.
I mean, I do understand the conflicts, because traditional design bid build versus a design build process. I come from multiple years in construction in the military and the civilian world. I understand your concerns. It's taken me a while to wrap my head around it because my skull's kind of thick, but it's taken me a while. But I have a good concept, and I know where you're coming from. It's not a self-serving process. It's actually more efficient and saves in the long run. It saves municipalities money on how they can send it, because we have a guaranteed maximum price. You're not being paying an extra engineering fee, and you move forward the way that you want to do it, and you have more input in the designs and the projects that you put forth.
Isn't just a general contract a guaranteed the maximum price?
Negative, sir, because you can do change. You have to do change. You can do change orders. If I design something, if I go to Councilmember Schwartz's engineering company and he gives me a design and says, and then I put it out for bid, you're required to take the lowest bid. As soon as the lowest bid is taken, they start putting in change orders and things start changing. We give you a guaranteed maximum price. We say right now it will not cost, that project will not cost more than $212,000. That part of it. If it goes $213,000 or more, we pick up the tab for it. We guarantee that cost.
But your experience would probably lead to me to believe that you won't lose money.
Well, it's a business. I mean, you're a business person too. So no, we're not going to be, we have wages to pay and stuff like that, just like any other construction firm. But what we do have done, and we've done it with both municipalities and school districts, is we picked up the tab. Things have come up that we have not seen and we didn't foresee, and we've paid the extra money.
No, I get that. I do.
But yes, you're correct. We are a business, but this is what we do.
Right.
Deputy Mayor Martinez?
So is there any incentive or does it ever happen that you actually spend less?
Yes.
Are you pretty close to it? I mean,
So yes, there can be contingency monies that do not get spent that would be returned to the city at that point. Yes, there are circumstances where the things do happen to us. We are extremely transparent. Every piece of documentation we give you, every dime that we spend, every hour that we have, all that stuff is provided to the municipality. And we are completely transparent on all the money that we have. So if we say $212,000 and it comes out to $209,000, happily give you back $3,000, give or take.
and then my follow-up question is regarding the solar battery project.
Mhm.
If I understand correctly, this is for instances like when we lose power and
Correct.
can't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so before we found out that we had the solar grant, we were actually talking about adding a generator in the budget for the 24 budget to give this building power when the power goes out, because it sucks when the power goes out and we send employees home because we don't know when it's going to turn back on. And so having that storage, that generator would allow us to continue to work. And again, then we could use this building during a catastrophe. If we lost power, we could use this as our kind of headquarters for that. But without a generator and no power, it becomes not unusable. So we were talking about doing a generator before all of this. So this would negate the need for a generator.
Cost. Okay, thank you.
Staff is looking for some direction. Councilmember Schwartz?
Since this is a alternative to I would assume diesel or natural gas powered generator.
Diesel generator.
for
Yes,
this
sir.
Facility. Did we get some projection on what the ongoing maintenance costs are, batteries versus a generator, lifespan, that sort of thing?
So I don't have the lifespan on the batteries for the solar plus. I don't. That I can do some research and get it to you.
You understand how that could be of concern?
Well, but I can also tell you from 22 years in the military and being very familiar with diesel generators, that your maintenance on diesel generators and your lifespan on diesel generators in extreme conditions is not that great. And the cost of a diesel generator for a size that would take care of your complex is going to be right around $500,000 to begin with. And that's not
Probably
even
more.
including installation, wiring and everything else. I am extremely familiar with them.
But just not the batteries.
The solar batteries, I'm not, because this is a new technology. The upkeep on the solar panels, as far as I know,
Very much.
is making sure that they're cleaned off if you have a dust storm or there's some kind of stuff that's going on there, but there's very minimal maintenance on them.
And what's roughly the lifespan of a solar panel?
Hi, my name is Luke Cashman. I'm a developer for McKinstry, so I've been working on this project almost since the beginning. The lifespan of a solar panel, we're looking at 10 years of high quality, like no problems whatsoever. The output's going to remain the same, and then it's going to start dropping slowly, but you can get 20 years out of them before the output level is dropping to
What's
the
the
point.
efficacy at 10 years?
And I think this is quoting off the top of my own head, and so I can follow up with you. And you can get these verified, but I believe it's about 94% after 10 years.
Pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Okay.
So
That's why I bring an engineer.
So staff is looking for a motion if council will appease.
I move to approve the museum lighting and solar panel projects as presented with a follow-up on that information that some of our council members have requested, please.
Be happy to, Miss Deputy Mayor. Sorry, I almost called you vice mayor.
It's okay.
We have a motion, just need a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the matter? So I'll just make one little comment.
Yeah.
I was a little skeptical about the solar, but with the battery backup and that cost savings that we were already looking at, I'm definitely in favor of that. The lighting thing did seem expensive, but when you broke it down into the previous work you done, and we're gonna have to pay that anyways. You know, I was on the fence with the lighting, but it seems we're kind of stuck with some of that bill, so it's a little more moderate to fix something that needs to be fixed. So I'm in favor of it. Councilmember Fancher?
I guess I haven't had much to say tonight. I'm absorbing a lot, but I would concur that I think the biggest problem was probably the process. I mean, and not necessarily your fault. I think we were, and that's why we're here, felt like we're a little bit in the dark. And not understanding the process. I'm the same way. I understand the design, build, and bid scenario, and this is definitely something new. A lot of us,
Understand.
you know, so that's been part of the struggle here.
Councilmember Schwartz?
Thank you. Yeah, I feel compelled to say something just because I have the concerns that I'm sure you gentlemen have heard at other municipalities and other public entities that you deal with over the years. But, you know, I will say that I made my decision which way I'm going to go on this, but I will just recognize that, you know, there are some entities that have made a significant investment in our community, and those entities happen to be involved in these particular industries, being battery technology and solar technology. And so I think it would be a sign of, you know, support that we embrace some of these technologies, whether we think that this is a jump into the void or not. But so, you know, with that in mind, that's how I'm going to proceed. But I will also say I am very, very leery of the process. You know, I believe the most transparency is afforded by free market principles, which would suggest, you know, that we have a competitive bid process and those sorts of things. And those aren't instigated until a definite need is identified. In this case, being that these fluorescent lamps are obsolete due to the government, you know, that is a need. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say.
And Councilmember, and I'd be more than willing to throw this out there. I would be more than happy to come back and sit down with you guys and have a conversation about how the work that we do and how we do it. And coming from the military and from private construction, I understand your concerns. I recognize what you do. And it took me a while to wrap, like I said, it took me a while to wrap my head around this because I'm used to traditional stuff. And and I understand the reason why, especially when it comes to the ESCOs and the energy saving, the aspect of it. But again, I probably provide you with my card to be more than happy to make a trip back out here to Moses Lake and sit down with you guys and talk about it. And just for your own comfort and for future projects that we work together, so we have a better understanding. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Martinez?
Would it be possible that we are notified or informed, educated when it's something like this versus what these gentlemen are used to?
I would hope
Just so
so.
we are aware ahead of time.
What I would say is in the future, I would hope that the person that's sitting in this chair would maybe. But I started into this process after it started, so this is all new to me too.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think it's incumbent upon the council to understand that these sorts of programs exist. I particularly was aware of McKinstry and the work that they do here in the state of Washington. And so I kind of know the flavor of this. Again, it's been something, it's sort of a black box to me, and therefore, you know, I have concerns, but it's probably, you know, we should just know the flavor of this, that by virtue of it, once the process gets started, and it can be started very easily by design, it's made to go quickly and efficiently. So once we, initiate the process, that's where it can steamroll us. So before we even engage these gentlemen, we should be very well aware of what we're getting into in the bigger picture, how it's going to play out. So.
And from my understanding, there were a few of you that weren't, there was many of you that weren't here when this first started back in 2021. I know the city manager has been turned over and stuff like that. So and again, I'm a firm believer in education and I'm a firm believer in transparency. So again, my offer will stand as we work with Moses Lake and we can move forward. Be happy to work with you guys.
Councilmember Scott.
I agree with what Dustin said about just embracing the technology, particularly with what's going on in our neighborhood right now. One thing that I will just sticks in my craw is the $400,000, $180,000, and then that sticks. That was never presented in my mind that those were two separate issues. I was thinking this literally is $400,000 put lights in this building, which I thought was exorbitant and ridiculous, and I would never vote for that. But now that we've got $182,000 backdoor charge, however, the morality, the ethics, the methodology, I don't like that. If I saw it again, I will promise you I would vote no.
So, Councilmember, totally respect that. I really do. Again, I'm new to here, and I'm more than willing to talk to you about, because you guys were not here when it was presented to you. It was presented to originally to Moses Lake with the IGA. There was an IGA proposal that was presented to Moses Lake.
Okay.
So I promise you, it was not like, hey, I'm going to roll the dice and see if I can swing this by you. It was in the original, an IGA, which is an investment grade audit. What Moses Lake asked us to look at. You were given a proposal and we stayed within that proposal.
Okay.
Councilmember Schwartz, anything else to add?
No, sorry, I covered it already. I just like to hit the button. It's fun. Yeah.
Well, we do have a motion and a second on the table. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Council, thank you. Mr. Mayor, thank you. We do look forward to working with you guys moving forward on these projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll bring item K to the front of new business. So the Hope Source Shelter Management Extension, and I'll turn to colleague Councilmember Skog to discuss what he'd like to discuss on this matter.
We're talking about a $1 million budget item, as near as I can read it. And that's in the council packet. Back in when this whole thing started with Hope Source, there was a not to exceed of $180,000 annual budget. And now we're at $1 million. When I look at their line items on page 95 of this packet, and you go $473,000 for the cost of assessing and arranging and coordinating and monitoring the delivery of individual services to meet the needs. There's part of me that reminds myself of Charlie Brown that just goes wah, 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 wah. And it seems like $1 million and more than half of it is just in assessing. And I see people in Moses Lake that are still out in the streets on a rainy night. I've heard stories, and I hope Mr. Hunt can share some of those. Maybe jump in here, David, but oh,
Yeah,
I would, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Hunt, you can step up.
That's an item. David Hunt from Moses Lake. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you go to page 95, Council Member Scott already kind of went over it. The first one, admin fee, $74,000, and I'm just going to round up. That's an allowable cost that benefit the organization as a whole. Well, give me 74 grand. It'll benefit me. I mean, that's what we're paying Hope Source for. Shelter case management, 473 grand. Doesn't include any taxes or any rent, anything, just management. But what's even funnier is the rapid rehousing case management, $121,000. Okay. If you look underneath that, it's to give out 40 grand. So you're paying somebody 120 grand to manage $40,000. I mean, I didn't even believe it when I saw it. If you can go to page 97, which is time of performance. This contract started in November 2020 and shall end the 31st day of October 2021. You don't even have a legitimate contract with Hope Source. It's never been renewed. Were you going to interrupt?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Could you assess what, I mean, other than this paperwork, we can read ourselves.
Yes.
What I'd like to hear from you is what do you see? What do you see? You're out in the streets. What do you see?
Well,
what do you, how are things getting solved?
One thing I've talked about it a lot. One, I'll bring up a lady I just met on Friday. What we're doing is not working. I met a lady at the park. I could tell she was homeless. She was with the guy pulling around a baby stroller. But then I noticed they had a baby on their back. I said, well, what's going on? You know, why are you here? She got kicked out of the place next to Tri-State. I don't know what we call it. Okay. She got kicked out of there for doing drugs. Okay. They didn't catch her doing drugs. They go down, they wipe the apartments, and they have a cloth that law enforcement uses and it turns blue or something. They kick her out with a 2-year-old baby. Now, to me, it's not a very big leap of why is she there? She's already admitted she's on drugs. So we're going to kick you out because you're doing what you're telling us you're going to do. So my question to her was, well, where do you go? Can you go to the sleep center? No, you can't have kids. Where do you go? I don't know. They told me to get out. So they were looking for a bus ticket to go to Spokane. Now, if I can back up a minute, they're both from our community, both of them. Okay. Husband and wife, both from the community. They need help. This is not helping. Paying somebody that started in 2021, 170 grand, and we're now at $1 million. Leave the council meeting. Nobody in this room can admit what Hope Source is doing is working. Go to Safeway right now. Go talk to them. Go to any of your stores or your businesses. Are they doing what we're paying them to do? No, they're not. And the money just keeps getting funneled to them, but yet nothing happened. I want to put it a little bit in perspective, though. This $1 million is from you, the city of Mose Lake. It doesn't include Grant County, doesn't include state funding, doesn't include federal funding, and private. This is $1 million for 1 year from the city of Mose Lake. And we have a community like we do. Everybody remembers Central Drive. What did Hope Source do to clean that up? Anybody can tell me? Name one thing they did to clean it up. Nothing. The city council, thank you for all you did. Kevin Fear, Captain Sands got it cleaned up, right? A lady came and talked at a meeting a couple weeks later over on Marina Drive. Dave Sands, Captain Sands, talked to her. And then Tina from Code Enforcement. Took us about a month, but we got rid of the campers. Where was Hope Source? Where's their case management for $500,000? Doesn't exist. So I would hope, and if you read through their contract, it's very clear on, I believe it's page 98, that you have a right to audit all their books. And I would ask the council to immediately do an audit and find out where the money is going. Also found interesting under that page 98 that they cannot take money from the county or the state if they're taking money from you. Voids the contract. So.
Okay. I just wanted some of those stories of what's happening. And what doesn't seem to be happening is people getting their needs met.
They're not.
And you know, our country is full of good intended millions and billions of dollars that are accomplishing nothing. So I think I want to have a resolution that we have a full audit of where of the books of what happened. Where does those dollars go? I don't know what that looks like or what it takes to get that, but I want it. You know how to get that?
So we had a meeting with Hope Source yesterday,
Okay.
a Zoom meeting. I asked them to prepare some documents to come to the council in October or next month, either the first meeting or the second meeting, and provide information that what they've done in the city of Moses Lake. Outcomes, all the statistics they have. We can also ask them to bring the finances.
I don't want to hear a wah. Yeah.
If I may, I would like to present some information since I did write the staff report.
Okay.
Would that be okay?
Just 1 minute. I know somebody who once said you can't manage what you don't measure. And I think that's a real profound statement. And I think when they talk about helping people, helping homeless, how many people did they get from unhoused to houses? I don't want a bunch or a few. Hard numbers.
They've got all those numbers because they have to report to the state.
But they also have to report to us.
Yeah. So Kirsten, you
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
jump.
A question really quick. Couple.
So I have a couple questions too, and thank you, David, for taking this off the consent agenda. And one of those questions was, does Hope Source get audited? Have we audited them? And can we audit them, please? So that's already been discussed. I guess I'd like explanation on these numbers, an actual breakdown. And I think we've talked about this before. The 74,000 for administration. Is that people? Is that one people? Is that 10 people?
Deputy Mayor, can we let Kirsten speak, and that way she can probably answer a lot of the questions that you guys might have.
Okay, and then I'll follow up.
There you go.
If you haven't answered these.
Yeah, I'd be
questions.
happy to share what I have for you. And then if there are questions I don't answer while I'm sharing it with you, let me know for sure. But I do want to just share, I want to try to help everybody understand what's going on here. The money, the $1 million, is what we have received from the state. There's not a drop of city money coming out of this. This started in November of 2020, this contract. So this is the first page of a contract with Hope Source. Separately, we've had contracts with the state through Grant County. So there's like several pass-through entities. It's actually federal money passed down to the state. And then the state gave the money to the counties. And then they gave us a grant called an ESG CP grant, Emergency Shelter Grant for COVID. And so originally the contract was entered into on November 6, 2020, specifically for the sleep center only, none of their other services. And they have many, many other services that they provide in our community, and they'll come speak to you about that in the next month. So when you go through the contract, I'm just going to go down to page 2, time of performance. And so, yes, it's accurate that this originally started November 2020 and ended on October 31st of 2021. What happened is the state kept finding that they needed to continue the program, so they kept giving more and more money. And for whatever reason, the city did not enter into a new contract. And that's actually what the purpose of today actually is. When you go and look at, this is the page we're looking, this is an amendment to the contract where we would change the time of performance to read that it would actually end on September 30th, 2023, which is Saturday. So as we were going through the contract, we realized there was an issue with that. And then we wanted to acknowledge how much money we actually passed through from state to county to us to Hope Source. And so when we first did the contract, we had, let me see if I can find it. Here was the original Exhibit B. where yes, it's in the packet. It's page 113. So there's a lot to it because one of the attachments is the Grant County Plan to End Homelessness. So the entire county had put together their plan. So this is just a small piece of it. And originally we had $275,000 in that first year. So as we received more and more money from the state, because they found that we were actually operating a successful sleep center, they kept giving the city of Moses Lake more money. And some of the organizations that originally were given the money gave it up. So you guys have actually approved 5 amendments with the county for their contract. So this is only one contract that we're looking at tonight with Hope Source. And so what they discovered over time is when we created this budget, nobody really knew what they were doing. The sleep center had just been put into place. They didn't categorize it. And then when what happens is we have this contract with Hope Source. They actually send us an invoice every month. And then we have to submit it to the county, who submits it to the state, who submits it to the federal government. So there's this big, long process. There's several categories on that invoice. There's a detailed voucher report that I have to fill out every month. And these categories are the way that the federal government wants us to report it to them. And so they actually send us data to support this documentation, and it's in the city records, it's at the county, they give it to Commerce. The county's already been audited. I already had to provide them a few more details. And they actually do give us a lot of data about who they're serving, but there are no names associated with it. They're assigned like case numbers because they're protecting people's privacy in terms of what they do for them. So there's several requirements that we have to meet and that Hope Source has to meet, and we couldn't do it. We don't have the capacity nor the knowledge. I don't even know how to interpret their reports that are passed on to the state, but they meet the state's requirements to be eligible and were successful, and they continued to give the city money. Now the grant is ending, so we were trying to clean this up. And this is just an accounting of what money was passed down from the federal government to the city of Moses Lake and what we passed on to them to manage just the sleep center program only. They have other services. There are other grants that they've got, and they manage many grants for many communities. They offer youth services, veteran services with different money. So this grant is only about the sleep center. It ends, and the county just today sent me a new contract from the state that I need to review it, but it's the new grant fund. It's called Emergency Housing Fund. They've determined that they need to continue providing some sort of funding for homelessness. And so this is going to be replacing the ESG grant. I will be bringing the county grant to you guys probably at the very next meeting, and it's about $688,000 for 1 year. A portion of that, if you chose, would go to Hope Source. If we did not continue to contract with Hope Source, we don't have the capacity to manage a sleep center. So when you start asking about their fees, we can have them present to you exactly what each of these categories means. The admin does, yes, it covers some of the staff people at the, overseeing the programs, but this is a 3-year time period. So when you average it out, that's $356,094.67 per year average. And that's to run the program. And I'm getting conflicting information, I'll be honest, about what we want to provide the homeless shelter, because when I arrived, I've only been here a year and a half. We had some analysis about whether we wanted to provide more services as a city to the homeless people. And the decision was made by council to just continue as we are at the sleep center and not buy land, not build anything permanent, and just do the bare minimum by providing overnight shelter. We provide overnight shelter so that we can enforce the no camping policy. Otherwise, we would have people camping all over our city parks and in right-of-ways, and we wouldn't be able to eject them. We have to provide enough sleeping units to cover the number of homeless individuals counted on that day in January when they do the nationwide point-in-time count. And we have 37 technically in our community. We have 38 units. We're ordering 40 because the number is going to go. If we haven't ordered anything because we're waiting on funding. So the county, like I said, has just recently been through an audit and they have to submit their data to the state and they monitor their numbers, and they would have only continued to provide us funding if we had been successfully implementing the program and doing it per their requirements. Now, that said, as Chief said, we talked with Hope Source just yesterday about managing or creating a new contract with the new money for next year, and it would come to you as well. And we have asked them to come and speak to you guys about what they do, what services they provide. They do have a completely different office somewhere down south on the hill.
On Ivy Street.
On Ivy Street.
And it's not what they do at the sleep center itself. The sleep center, the people can come at the evening, they check in, they sleep, and they have to leave in the morning because that's what we have wanted to offer them. Hope Source has different programs in their other building, their main offices. So I tried to answer as many questions as I could with that, but what other questions do you have? I'd be happy to answer.
So I understood that the city's not really paying any of this. I get that. But I think there's still a responsibility on our part to kind of understand what those numbers really are. So I'd like more of a breakdown of what this means. Thank you for clarifying that this is over 3 years. It didn't occur to me that it was over 3 years, although it says up there. So I have specific questions. Should I direct them to you separately in an email or now?
Whatever you feel is appropriate for tonight's meeting. The goal of this meeting was to just get the contract rectified, to read what truly occurred over time with all the additional fundings that came. And so on the agenda, it's a 2-pager, an amendment to change the time of performance. And the budget is hereby replaced with the new Exhibit B that replaces the old inaccurate one when we were new and not understanding what was going on.
Okay, so specifically regarding the contract on page 115, it says case services area would be open all day. Is that the building that sits there where they check in?
No, they have the other office on Ivy is where I didn't know the street name, but that is open all day long. The way we operate, they don't have enough staff to like have them in both facilities because that's not the point of the sleep center. So they have to go to if people want services, they need to go to the other building. That said, when they're checking in, they do try to identify needs, and that's part of their case management. They work with them outside of that elsewhere at the other building, and they do refer them on to Renew and other services. They work with Serve Moses Lake. They bring food in every day for the folks. So there's a lot of entities coordinating and collaborating together. And so one of the things I've also asked Hope Source to do is that with this new grant that we get monthly reports that are narratives that accompany all the numbers that are encrypted so that we can share that with you on a monthly basis. So you know what they're doing and how many people they're serving. We've asked them to come with some examples of folks that they've helped to integrate up through the system, from just being sleep center clients to maybe moving into the enhanced shelter and then maybe getting into their own rental. You know, they've helped them to find a job and they're self-sufficient. They might pay their first month rent, kind of a thing. That's where you get some of those different categories, help them get into their own housing. And so sharing some of those success stories, but not everyone in that situation wants that kind of help. So really, we're just managing a sleep center.
Might I suggest, whoa, that's loud, that you look at that wording, because to me, it sounds like that building over there where the sleep shelters
The new
are.
contract for the new grant will be scrubbed. This will be a template. And now that we all know how it's going to operate and they've got the different facilities, we'll make a more accurate contract that I'm sure you guys will look at quite thoroughly and we'll have a lot of participation on.
All right, thank you.
Can we take a quick pause? It is 9 o'clock, so we can get the students their paperwork signed so that they can get home and get enough rest for the next day. If there's any students that would like to get their form signed, you're more than welcome to stay if you want, but. Good. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Are you done now or? Okay. Okay, so. Councilmember Schwartz, you have questions, comments?
Yes, sorry to continue this long and fruitless conversation. So Kirsten, can you give me some clarification, please? The 3-year thing, Deanna, apparently I was confused by it as well. Is this $1 million for 3 years of operation?
Yeah, beginning on November 6th through September 30th. We will get one more bill from them.
Okay, yeah, it's confusing. Some of the language in here says the dates between 2020 and 2023. And so it's kind of,
Yeah, I understand that. And it came in last minute, or probably would have had a lengthier report and I should have spent more time trying to explain all this. But I also know that it's sometimes easier to explain it in person.
okay. And so if we extrapolate that over 3 years, it's roughly $330-some thousand a year, correct?
Yeah, it was 356. And then what this doesn't take into account is we didn't pass on all of the money to Hope Source. We kept some in the city to pay the leases for the ground and the 2 structures and a few other bills like the utilities and stuff.
And so that would be the amount that's represented in our general fund budget item is just for the ground, but that's also paid for through the grant. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we have a few sources for the homeless. We have the grants we get from the state. There's some recording fees. There's not a lot. And then there's some state sales tax dollars that they've capped. In the beginning, it was like this 3% reimbursement, but now it's like capped at 65 grand a year. I think the state realized they're giving out too much.
And so for the first year that the sleep center existed, they operated on a budget of $247,000 for year 1.
That's what we were given, I think. And it was like, how do we make this work? We were all trying to figure it out. I wasn't here, but yeah, we were trying to.
I mean, there was a sleep center and it did operate with a budget of $247,000. Is that correct?
Yes. And I want to tell you that if I can find it again. Maybe I'll show it again. I really think they really, people didn't quite know what they're doing. I heard everybody came together and threw the shelter together, got the site prepped and everything. But the grant exhibit B, will show, it says that they're going to provide wraparound services for $100 a day per individual.
17 days per individual.
Yeah,
which is some
so
average of
page
what?
113
Yeah.
in the packet. So I think that was just their best guess at how to do this. And so over time, they've figured out where their time and energy is actually going and how to better categorize it into the funds that the state required.
No,
So-
I understand that completely. I get the exercise. I don't know if we need it or not, but okay. I guess I'm just trying to wrap my head around because really, from what I'm hearing, nobody in the community perceives that they've added any services since 2020. And it also sounds like there are roughly the same number of homeless people running around since 2020. I also understand inflation, but $247,000 to $330,000 is a pretty big increase for no increased services. And also, I'm having trouble understanding their metrics. If they say, we're going to keep giving you more and more money, and somehow the contract got left in limbo so that could just happen whenever the state deemed that this program was so successful. That's the story. But the fact is, there are the same number of homeless people as there were when we started. So what is the arithmetic they're using to determine that this program was so successful that they need more money? I mean, the only reason that you would need more money if the program was successful is if there was a sudden uptick in the number of homeless people. But then you would also have to say that we as a community had nothing to do with that a UFO came in and just foisted them upon us. So I'm having a little bit of trouble just understanding the costs just keep escalating for no increased service.
Well, I think what we do is just allow Hope Source the opportunity to share their information and talk about what their services are and how they operate. I can't speak for them or on their behalf because I meet with them weekly, but we're really focused more on what's going on with the funding sources, the operations. We deal with like having to trespass people and making sure that all the grant requirements are met. But we're shuffling paperwork in my office. They're on the ground doing the work with the folks, honestly. So I get minimal reports on that, but we can have them speak to this, all of your questions.
Based on what I'm hearing tonight, I think, I would be interested in putting this out for a competitive bid or something of that nature, where we could say, let's get a few different entities in here who might want to run this sleep center. And it goes back to comments that I made over a year ago or something about, we need to first identify what the problem is. And if the community members say that the problem is people doing drugs and urinating and defecating and fornicating on the streets, that's the problem. We just need a place for them to go. So if there's a security agency or somebody like that we could pay, I don't know, 250 grand a year for, that can keep these people in a place, because it's apparent to me that the other wraparound services are a bunch of nonsense. So why don't we just pay for what the community wants, which is a place for these people to, not be in the park doing their thing. And then I believe that there are entities like, Serve Moses Lake or Salvation Army or Alcoholics Anonymous that provide all of the wraparound services that anybody could want. And they're already here in the community. And so I would agree with Deanna that number one, we need to audit this program. I think that's for the health of the whole state. If a lot of this is going on, that some sunshine needs to be shown, placed on this thing. But I would definitely consider just opening it up again. We own the facility or we're leasing it. So we have all the right in the world to say who's going to manage it for us. And I'm not very happy with what's been going on so far. So, and thank you to Mr. Hunt for bringing up some of these issues as well. That's all I have.
So this is kind of a cleanup exercise, just amending the contract to show the correct.
What I
dates.
presented on the agenda, yes, is a cleanup exercise. And then everything else is a big community conversation that obviously can't be solved tonight.
So if the council, I know there's been a lot of comments here. So if there's just some final comments so we can wrap this portion up. I know Hope Source is going to be doing a presentation here probably next council meeting sometime soon. So we can continue the discussion then. So just some final comments. Councilmember Skog.
Final comments. Kirsten, how much time do you think you've spent a month? I was going to say man hours, but people hours.
It's kind of difficult to track, to be honest. When I first took on some of the duties, I had to learn it all from scratch, so it took me longer, but it's honestly at this point, a couple hours a week.
I mean, you're meeting with them once a week.
Yeah, for like less than half an hour, we touch base. The time consuming part is doing the paperwork I have to submit to the state.
And that is still happening in that 2 hours, the paperwork part. Okay.
Yeah, and we'll have occasional emails like, hey, this thing broke down, in the men's bathroom, and then it's contacting maintenance, Josh, who left already, and they go out and make a repair. Things like that.
I mean, part of my question to that is I personally think that you have bigger fish to fry than.
And we do have, I mentioned this on Saturday, we do have somebody that's going to be taking over in that position in November.
Does this contract, is that something don't have a existing contract right now?
Well, we're making the contract right, and then it will end on Saturday. We want to make it clean for our own auditing purposes as well.
So we're doing a contract that's going to last from now till Saturday?
We're just cleaning it up. Yeah. And then we will come back to you with a contract with the county, and then we can go through that process of how are we going to spend that money? Are we going to do a request for services, an RFP to more than one provider and see what we get back.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
To speak to Dustin's question, the program has grown just a little bit since we didn't have the former hotel or motel. So there has been some change with that, whether or not that's $100,000 worth of expenses, I don't know. That's for Hope Source to answer. The contract ends Saturday. So then what happens? Is Hope Source no longer opening up the place, or what?
No, we can find a way to continue on with what they're doing. I don't think anyone had any intentions of having them just stop. But we have to enter into a new contract under the new Emergency Housing Fund, EHF grant. But it sounds like tonight you want us to go out and solicit additional bids. So
I think so. I just don't want the services to stop. And it sounds like Hope Source has worked without a contract with us before.
you know, I don't know. I can't speak to before my time here, but we can make something happen, make it, rectify it. I mean, if they're providing services and they're going to send us an invoice, we do need to make payment on that, but we'll go down the path you've requested tonight, and we won't stop the services. If we do, we'll have people camping out on the grounds.
Yes.
It's gonna take a while to do the RFP. And so, I mean, we'll obviously have to have some sort of an extension for a little while. Frankly, I would recommend that maybe we look at doing an extension at least through the winter time so that we don't have an end of services when it's cold.
Right.
So
I agree.
especially since we're gonna hear, I believe this week from the county on the pallet shelters. I asked the Board of County Commissioners if they could quickly make that decision so we could look at getting those before winter, because those are insulated and also have a heating element in them. So.
Councilmember Fanger.
I think most of it got answered. One, what happens October 1? I was thinking the same thing. Why are we ending this thing on the 30th with no plan? Wouldn't we put some language in this on the amendment regarding month to month, or do something?
I think that if we can get this resolved, that we sit down with Hope Source and we just see if we can do an extension through maybe April 1st or something like that, just to get through the winter months.
Member Eck. Councilmember Swartz.
Mark covered it, thanks.
So can we make the motion to approve with the amendment of the date to March 31st?
I think we need to talk to them about that. So let's just approve what's there, and staff will work with Hope Source to get an amendment through, like I said, maybe April 1st or March 30th.
So what we're going to approve tonight is just till Saturday?
Is the contract that you currently have in front of you. Yeah.
And the contract really is specific to just that grant funding source. We have other money available in the homeless fund, right? Through the recording fees and those other sales tax dollars. So like they could still operate, but we'll get something in place that is not specific to this grant. And then before we do the next large grant, we will come back to you.
So we just need a motion to approve the extension to September 30th.
I move. Yeah.
Or I'll second.
Okay.
Ladies first.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on, item number 3, Longview Park and Sun Terrace Park Design Services, presented by Doug Coots.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I only have a 45-page slideshow with graphic. No, I'm going to keep this short and sweet. In our budget this year, 2023 budget, we have $40,000 budgeted for the design and master plan of Longview Park. Staff went out, solicited requests for qualifications for firms that do landscape design and do design parks. We received 8 responses. Of the 8, we reviewed them and narrowed the field to 3 firms: SPVV Landscape Architects, RWD Landscape Architects, a lot of initials going on, and Bernardo Wills. We then conducted 3 interviews. All of this was done with a panel of staff and two Parks, Recreation and Cultural Services board members. So we had community input into these. We interviewed those 3 firms remotely, had them dial in, talk to them, ask them questions, presented them with questions well ahead of time. The proposals we reviewed, the recommendation from that subcommittee was for RWD landscape architects to be recommended to the park board as a whole. Park board then reviewed that and made the recommendation to council to move forward with contracting with RWD landscape architects. Now, we did have an alternate option in there for the design of the Sun Terrace Park in May Valley as well. We included that as an economy of scale for number 1. So having a firm come out and do 2 plans at the same time saves us money, whereas having them come out individually costs us more for each plan in the long run. So we did that as an option. And what I'm presenting to you tonight is a request for a motion and second and approval to proceed with design services not to exceed $80,000 with RWD landscape architects for initially $40,000 for Longview Park, with an option to go forward with a pending budget amendment that has been submitted already for an additional $40,000 if council approves the additional $40,000. That's what we're looking at doing, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilmember Schwartz.
Let me get this straight. So the deal is if you buy 1, you pay $40,000, but if you buy 2, you can pay the low price of $80,000.
You can pay the low price of $80,000, an additional $40,000 this year, or you could pay upwards of $54,000 to $56,000 to $58,000 next year.
Got it.
And then the other aspect of this and the timing is our state grant cycle for park construction and development begins next spring. So if I have 2 park designs to take through, I have 2 chances to get us grants to create these parks and put them in place. So I'm looking at trying to get us more and more options of getting state money to do these things for us rather than having to do most of them in-house. Any additional questions?
Yeah.
Councilmember Scott.
And a landscape architect. You've got the whole site plan, and they've got little dots that say this plant goes here and the sprinklers go there.
They go through that exercise, yes, sir. And they will, what this process is a community-based design process. So they will engage with the communities in both Longview and May Valley to work with them to design what they would like to see in these parks. Part of what our process with this will also be water conservation in the design. So we're not going to put in grass areas just for the sake of having grass. There will be different areas in there. And this is something that we asked in the actual interview processes. We are looking at this. How would you involve xeriscaping, and other aspects of design in the park to create a great park while minimizing the amount of water we need to put on this?
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
To put you on the spot, is the priority the Longview Park?
Priority would be the Longview Park, yes.
Thank you. Much needed there.
Councilmember Schwartz.
Yeah, sorry. First of all, I'll apologize, Doug, for missing the meeting the other day. So please be patient with me.
Absolutely.
Oh, do we have an anticipated budget, square foot or something that they're
For the actual construction?
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
because we don't have a design yet. So
These are just slated as sort of the continuance of our parks program.
These are properties that have been either purchased or provided as parks for those areas. And they're in our parks plan going forward, and what we'll be bringing forward as policy for going forward with the city. When do we need a park? Where do we need a park? Those kinds of policies are coming that I'm working on with our committee right now and our park board. But these are in areas where, yes, we've identified this as a park need.
Thank you.
There's no further discussion. Accept a motion.
I move to approve the Longview and Sun Terrace Park Design Services as presented.
Second that.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Administrative reports.
I don't believe we have any administrative reports. So we're moving forward.
Everybody's ready to go home. Council committee reports, sorry. Council member Swartz.
I was hanging out with staff all month, so I don't have anything either.
Council member Madewell.
I don't have anything at this time.
Council member Fancher.
Nothing for me.
Council member Scog.
Yeah. I had a couple questions that I'd like to get answered next week. Is one, the status of the restored parking lot? Two, the MLI water pressure and their changing their code from conditional permit to acceptable or approved. And there's a third one I wrote down. And I don't know where we're supposed to get answers for those or when we're supposed to get them, but I'd like to find out here the status of what's going on with those. I know those people call me and ask me what's going on.
So I'll have staff just reach out to you and answer those questions. Yeah.
Councilmember Madewell.
Can I make a comment on the Restore City parking lot? It is being paved at this time.
Today.
It is. I saw pictures of it today.
Okay. There we go.
Answered one question. Councilmember Eck. Deputy Mayor Martinez.
Sorry, guys, but I do have a couple updates. On the Grant County Board of Health meeting, we talked about Narcan. The health district will be a source for EMS, first responders, law enforcement for Narcan when our supplies are getting short, or if you're close to expiration, you can exchange them. This is not for the public. ACH grants money is covering this Narcan for the health district. It's $40 per dose for them to purchase it. And then if anybody is needing it for public use, Narcan, just a reminder that one, it's available at the pharmacies now, and there is a Narcan vending machine at the sleep center, which of course is only open certain hours of the day or evening. And then Mose Lake Watershed Council had their State of the Lake presentation, which of course I asked for some investigation on some potentially failing septic tanks. But I just wanted to again commend all the partners involved in that. We've made great progress in a very short amount of time that they've been gathering as a partnership or a group. So we are making progress on getting the lake clean and keeping it clean. That's it.
Thank you. Just a couple items. We had our community development public works meeting. The main topic was water. A plan seems to be solidifying and gaining traction. We're still a lot of moving pieces, so when things get a little more concrete, then it'll come to the council for consideration on moving forward.
I'll add to that. If anybody has several $1 million laying around and they don't need it, that would go a long way to solve the problem.
We could use some help pushing the federal government to approve a contract for some water. So if anybody has any political clout and would like to help, then we'll accept that.
I have a meeting next week with Congressman Newhouse. So I will have a conversation with him on Wednesday.
All right, appreciate that. The other thing I have is in regard to the GTA. They have a new app that has been launched. It ties in with Google. You can also go on the website to track where each bus is minute by minute. And you can also plan out your trip. So just making it easier to use the system. And a reminder that the services are still free to ride the bus. To the rider, yes.
I have one more thing. Sorry, I was gonna ask Doug, we have one last concert in the park, don't we?
Yes, we do. This Saturday is Umani Festival, and I hope I said that right. And we have Supersonis, which is Cuban dance music that will be in the park after the Umani Festival.
Okay, so it's this weekend.
This
I was
weekend,
thinking it was
the
next week.
30th.
When are Doug Coots and the Cootones going to be performing?
There's no such band, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing concerts in the park back. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. No, apparently my band name is called The Dead Agendas. I don't know what.
If there's nothing else, our next regular council meeting is October 10th at 6:30. Meeting is adjourned.